Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order, and I will ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment on the November 14th, 2023 meeting and the agenda of the December 12th, 2023 meeting in accordance with state law, city council, and housing authority policy. Before we get started, I have a very important piece of business to talk about, and that is the birthday of our council person, Michelle Mitchell. Would you all sing with me? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Michelle Mitchell. Happy birthday to you. All right. We will continue the presentation from the Chamber of Commerce to the January meeting. And now we have a presentation from Oktoberstash, and Fire Chief Cajon is here to tell us about this. Chief?
Good afternoon, Mayor Wells, respected members of the council, city staff. It is my honor to present to you Firefighter Louis Kinoshita, who is the driving force behind this program. It's absolutely amazing what the group has done. They do fundraising and community outreach, and this program has been now in play close to 10 years. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Firefighter Kinoshita.
Good afternoon. My name is Louis Kinoshita. I'm a firefighter paramedic with Heartland Fire and Rescue here in the city of El Cajon. I'd like to introduce to you guys Oktoberstash. I know some of you guys have been aware and participated in this, but here's a little bit about who we are. So what is Oktoberstash? It's a nonprofit fundraiser ran by off-duty firefighters. It's comprised of mainly 3 events through the months of September and October. From the first event, we all shave our faces, clean-shaven mustaches, everything's gone. And then for the final event, we'll compete for who has the best mustache grown out for that time period. These events are traditionally held at East County establishments to help bring recognition back to our local businesses. And a little bit about the story about how it all began. So it started out as friendly competition amongst the fire crews. Everybody would throw money into a pot. Shave at the beginning of October, and at the end, somebody would rate them, and it was a winner-take-all pot. This eventually grew to be something a lot more. Thanks to Rob Latch and Jim Bridger, 2 El Cajon firefighters at the time, in 2009, they were able to get us a 501c3 tax code, and that's where the El Cajon Professional Firefighters Foundation was born. Over these years, it started out with Rob and Jim, and this has been passed on to John Nevin, Erwin Sanchez, Gabe Bololi, and now to myself. So in 2010, John Sancholiu is a firefighter here in the city of El Cajon. His sister-in-law, Trina, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was actually the first recipient. Excuse me. All the firefighters pitched in money into a pot, and at the end of the month, they were able to raise about $1,100. The significance of that is that was just the El Cajon unit at the time. The next year, El Cajon PD joined us for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And then after that, as Heartland, La Mesa and Lemon Grove also joined. So just in 2012, we only had 4 locals that participated in this. I'll show you how many we've actually grown that up to now in this past year. So over this period of 14 years, I'm happy to say that we've raised roughly over $300,000 for recipients, members of the community, all through these events. So here are some of the people that we've sponsored, and then at the top we also have the local businesses that we try to host that. So 2013 was actually the year I got hired, and that was at Downtown Cafe. We had the Make-A-Wish Foundation at Urban Pizza, Challenge Athletes. Then we have local members from the community, and then families from within the departments. So here are just a few to list them. And then again, coming back to the Courtyard Marriott when they first opened, and then another year at Courtyard Marriott. So a lot of people ask how it is that we raise all this money. And the main way that we raise money is through these events. And these are actually the two recipients from this year, the Yeager family and the Durrell family. But we get a lot of support from our local businesses. Here are some of them that have donated in our past events. These prizes that they donate, they'll either donate something of value like Home Depot's donated chainsaws, Lake Cuyamaca's donated like free night stay at their local resort. We'll do these for an opportunity drawing, and opportunity drawings are really what helps us generate money. And then some of them will come out and have a direct monetary donation. So the main, one of the other things that you'll see on the right side on this picture are the T-shirts that we've had over the past few years. Some of these you'll see walking up and down the street. We create a new design every year, and then we try to orient them somehow to the recipient of that year, just for a little bit of recognition. The backs of the shirts will have locals or unions, different union groups on the back who all donate money to get onto the back, along with the local businesses that will help support our main events. So here are a list of all the different unions and labor groups that have joined our cause over the years. I'm happy to say that 14 of them are still in support. And the reason why some of them drop out is like San Diego City actually stopped contributing to ours, I guess, in a sense, and they actually started their own. So we're influencing other departments and communities into growing something a lot bigger. So here's a picture from some of the events that we've had in the past. Our final events are usually the largest gatherings that we'll have. The last 3 years, we've estimated about over 800 people attend each event for the finales. Let's see, if you haven't had a chance to attend, I highly advise you try to make one. I know some of you guys have. It's quite amazing to see how many people from the community, local departments, fire departments, police departments, hospital staff, private ambulance companies, everybody comes out for one common cause. And we're able to do a lot. So if you have any further questions about who we've supported in the past, you can follow us on social media. That's basically how we get our word out. Facebook and Instagram, our tag is Oktoberstash. So check us out and let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any questions?
Just a comment. Thank you, Louis and Coke. I mean, it's no surprise that El Cajon's leading the region with this. And I got to say, the people and families that the donations go to that you guys pick are incredible. You guys have told me a handful of the families. And just so the public knows, these families are in crisis. They've usually suffered some kind of a traumatic injury. And this firefighter community steps in and really helps them out really at their lowest point. And since you guys have transitioned, I know that you guys donated money to organizations, but now that you guys are doing it to families, I mean, I can't tell you how incredible of a story it is. And so thank you for what you're doing on the clock and off the clock, because this is all off the clock stuff, but you're still serving the community, so I appreciate it.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And hey, please let us know in advance next time when the next event is.
Awesome. It won't be until next September, but I'll be
figured,
sure to
but-
pass it on.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And Mr. Mayor, as they're sitting down, I just want to express our gratitude to them. As Councilmember Ortiz said, this happens not on city time. This is their own time, and it's amazing. It's heartwarming how connected our employees are to our community. It's something that they love, and we know that we give our time and our money to the things that we love, and clearly our fire department, our staff, they love our community.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Council? All right. That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items?
Yes.
Which one?
Number 6, please.
Number 6. And
Yeah, really briefly, I had a question from the public with regard to the number of organizations or companies that bid this project. And I think it was one, but I think it'd be helpful for the public if we had some kind of an explanation as to why there was only one bidder. And I think the concern was, shouldn't there be more bidders for a project? I don't know if the city manager could weigh in for a second.
Certainly, we always want as many bidders as possible because then we know we're getting the most competitive process. In fact, you'll see an agenda item later today where there were 7 bidders on it. And they were fantastic. However, when we put out an RFP or a bid, there's certain minimum qualifications that a firm has to meet. And as long as they meet them and the dollar amount is within the engineer's estimate, then it would make sense to move them forward. There'd be no reason not to. We can't entice businesses to apply if it's not in their wheelhouse or the timing is wrong. We can't force that to happen. There are sometimes, however, if someone comes in and the bids come in really high or a bid comes in really high above the engineer's estimate, sometimes we'll evaluate that and say, well, are there conditions in the market? Are there a couple firms that typically would have applied but couldn't because they're finishing up big jobs? And we may reapply it or re-bid it at that point. But in this case, it fell within the parameters of the bid. It's a company that we've been working with in the past. And in fact, this is phase 2 of the project, and they're actually handling phase 1 right now. So they have a lot of familiarity with the project. So I would recommend to the council that we move forward with this project.
And this came under budget. Is that the bid came in? The whole project is under budget, correct?
It's within the estimate.
It's within the
engineer's estimate.
Okay, great.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve all consent items then.
Sir,
before we do that, staff, did you have any consent items that you wanted to pull?
I believe we have a speaker on 2 of the consent items.
Yeah, let's call speakers.
thank you, sir. For item 2, it's truth.
Hello, Truth.
Hey there, long time no see, couple of days, I think. Hey, it's Truth back in festive red, and I say it's been a couple of days because I see Bill at Sandag all the time. It's great. And Steve sometimes. All right, item 2. First is a payment of warrants, the same thing as a payment of demands. I actually have no idea. I do not approve of the payment of warrants not being attached within the agenda packet. That's not transparent spending by city government. Other cities include it in the PDF agenda packet. So I'd like to see that here as well, because I don't want to see any information missing like Sandag's toll collection. Thank you.
The city manager, what is the difference between a warrant and a payment?
It's a record of the payments that we've made, and the council has a chance to review and ratify those. Some smaller cities that I've worked for do include them as part of the agenda packet. Ours would be so enormous. Council can always ask to see them. In fact, Mr. Goebel's holding up the warrants right now, so that would increase the size of the agenda packet by that much. So they're always available to the public. We would love for the public to come down and to City Hall to look at them, or we can send them a PDF copy of those things. So,
Okay, thank you. Graham.
Item 3 is truth.
That's why I stayed here.
Oh, you have another one. Okay,
I was just
go ahead.
making it easy.
Yes.
Time management. Meeting management is what they call it. Okay, fun fact, and this is actually going to be related to that gigantic pack of payment of warrants. I've spoken about this item probably 20 times over my lifetime so far in the last year. And it's because I like transparency. So I'd say passing items without reading ordinances, passing ordinances without reading them in full makes sense because much like what Steve just held up, some ordinances can be similar to that. And I understand that. But what I would like to see is instead of just the title being read, I'd like to see like a one-line short summary of what the item is. Because most people are lazy. They don't read anything in the agenda. If you're lucky, they might read the title. So I would like it because you never know. There could be deception. Not by you guys. I don't think you guys are deceptive. But maybe somebody in the future will be. They're going to have a title that sounds really good, and it's going to be something really bad contained. And if I give everybody an example just off the top of my head, the Patriot Act, it sounds so good, makes you feel all warm and fuzzy and American, but then when you read it, you find out it's everything that's un-American, takes away all your rights. But you know what? I almost makes me change my decision. Only one person almost made me change my position on this item, and that was the mayor of National City, Ron. Because he said, much like Steve just did, he said, look, it's 40 pages if you want me to read the whole thing. But I think I forgot to say, just a one-line summary would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else?
No other cards, sir.
Okay, then, Phil, just would you mind restating your motion?
Move to approve consent items.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, that brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions. And, of course, an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 3. The first one is Rebecca Brandstetter.
Hello, Rebecca. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Brandstetter from the East County Homeless Task Force and CASA, which stands for Community Action Service and Advocacy, and I'm a proud resident of El Cajon. I know you have a full day and a long night ahead of you, so I'll keep this brief. But before the year comes to an end, I just wanted to fill you in on some of the accomplishments of the task force in 2023. Our Shelter and Housing Solutions Group meets monthly on the second Friday from 1 to 2 p.m., and we appreciate Councilmember Mitchell's regular participation there. This year, some of the topics we covered were SB 4, the county's Crisis Stabilization Unit and Recovery Bridge Center that's coming to El Cajon in the next few months, and that was held during Mental Health Month in May. The county's new Long-Term and Stable Housing Solutions Plan, the Encampment Resolutions Program along the San Diego River. We are excited for this cooperative effort among the county, the city of Santee, and the city of San Diego to relocate homeless individuals and families from the riverbed by providing intense housing navigation and case management. Last week, for our December meeting, we highlighted the Interfaith Shelter Network as they gear up to start up their rotational shelter program next month. The task force also participated in all 4 of the town hall meetings that El Cajon held on homelessness this past winter and spring. And as an aside, I'm going to tell you, it's really gratifying to know that the city listens to your constituents. When we received the housing office's letter in early 22 asking about, what do we need to do to meet homeless needs, I suggested that we invest in some community engagement and education, and maybe with focus groups in each district, and you delivered. You included reports from a bunch of different departments whose work touches on homelessness and people facing housing insecurity, and you deliberately gathered input from the people in the room, from from everybody who attended. And I also want to say hats off to your communications department, because you adapted that program for successive meetings and for specific groups. And as a resident of El Cajon, I really appreciate your seeking input as you develop policy. But getting back to the task force, we did resume at last our in-person meetings in April with a full house at Grossmont Community College. Assemblymember Chris Ward, who was visiting a new spot in his newly drawn district at Grossmont Community College, welcomed us, and we're thrilled to have a new partnership with them. Oops, and I'm running out of time. Anyway, we have part of that started a faith-based communities initiative that you helped kick off with the town hall meeting at Fletcher Hills Presbyterian Church. There's a whole lot more. I'll send it to you. Thank you.
You had 1 second left to go. That's very good. Did you practice that all night last night?
Thank you.
Let me see if there's any questions for you. All right, we're set. We're good. Thank you very much.
Truth?
All right, so now I can talk a little more free. It's been 9 months since I've been back, which is too long, but life is full of mini meetings, as some of you know. In fact, I actually ditched the city of San Diego to be here with you guys. I literally even left food on the table to be here. I did not finish my lunch. But you know what's funny? The very first time I came to speak at the city council, I spoke a little bit about the ALPRs. I've spoken several times more since that time. And simple question: if cameras are the solution to crime, then why, when you guys, everyone but Phil, were growing up, there were less cameras and less crime? That's because you're hoping to band-aid a societal issue that really needs to be addressed at home. Putting up over 970 ALPR spy cameras all over the county so far just to catch stolen vehicles makes as much sense as saying defund the police just because there's a few bad apples. It's collective punishment. It's treating everyone like they're criminal rather than as innocent like our law demands. And the state is helping the ALPR Corporation flock build a monopoly on our privacy. They are worldwide. From the state's organized retail theft prevention grant, cities such as Chula Vista and National City got millions to put up ALPRs. If this is really for retail theft prevention, why not help the stores that have products behind lock and key? And since when did the crazies running this state care anything about theft when they turn a blind to justice eye to $1,000 in theft? Their criminal actions are being used as the justification for creating a police state. And this data is shared with other cities, while the criminals who enter our country illegally don't have to worry about their data being shared with immigration. And according to both SANDAG and FBI stats, overall crime is actually down. So the American people continue to have a right to not be filmed 24 hours a day, tracking our cars and associated vehicles who our friends are. Doesn't matter how many stolen cars are found, it remains harassment, stalking, and a violation of the 4th and 14th Amendment guarantees in the Constitution, which public servants claim to take an oath to. And you guys are not the only ones in violation. And speaking of driving, I want people to watch this YouTube video entitled Sandag Webinar on AB 43 and AB 1938, where one can learn that a government entity can use both bills to lower speed limits anywhere by up to 10 miles per hour. They can also label an area safety corridor and take up to 1/5 of the total roadway, or even 1/5 of all public government-controlled streets or highways. San Francisco pushed their Vision Zero culture change of 20 miles per hour to as low as 15 miles per hour on roads. And they're planning over 118 safety corridors every 1/4 of a mile with well over 300 signs at a cost of $500 each. All these changes use the excuse of safety, but they can't even provide an estimate of any decreases in fatalities. Vision Zero is a fraud. They just don't want us driving, much like Sandag. That's why I fight there. Thank you.
The last public comment speaker is Brenda Hammond.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, Graham. Mr. Mitchell. Happy holidays. I realize you're not allowed to public comment by state law. So I'm asking you to think about re-vetting some of the programs that are referred to defendants by the county courthouse. The defendants made a mistake, got caught, go to court, plead guilty, and are assigned and referred to the programs to learn to become better people. What I witnessed is bullying and harassment by some of the programs, some of you know who I'm talking about, which is creating an even bigger problem or a way to create more programs. You know, like anger management, taking advantage in confusing people that already have a mental illness seems like an easy way to, create more programs. I saw this happen to a family member of mine the past few weeks. She made a mistake. I'm not going to say her name. She made a mistake. She's trying to get it fixed. I've been helping her. I've seen harassment by this place that the court sent her to. I've seen harassment. I've seen them confuse her. She already has a mental illness. This is not right. You guys need to vet these people. So this new program that's coming in, I hope you vet them well. And please, re-vet the ones you have, because they could be shut down very easily. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Forgot about December 9th. Thank you so much for the old-fashioned Christmas fun. There was no music, but I still danced. I love the cops on the horses. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other speakers, sir.
Thank you. All right, there are no written communications and no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 8 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 8 is the selection of deputy mayor, and I'll ask our city manager to please tell us about this.
Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, according to the municipal code, each December the city council is to designate one of its own to serve as the deputy mayor. Mr. Goebel currently serves in that role, and his term actually expires at the end of this month, December 31st of this year. The staff report includes a history of the deputy mayor rotations for the last 4 years, and if the council were to rely on that rotation, unless the council wishes to do otherwise, it's Mr. Ortiz's turn to serve as the deputy mayor, and that term would go through December 31st, 2024. So with that, if the will of the council is to direct, we would require a vote for that, and then we can make those changes to all of our paperwork and websites beginning January 1st.
I'll make a motion to adopt that.
Sir, pardon, we do have a speaker?
We do?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Truth?
I just like to talk. That's why I'm here. No, I'm just kidding. Yesterday, I actually talked to the city of San Diego about picking their new pro tem. That was fun. Cajon's better. You guys know that. Are we talking about the deputy mayor or the mayor pro tem? No, I'm just kidding again, because that's a fun fact for people that those titles are one and the same. Isn't that interesting? If I'm not mistaken, based on the official chart of rotation, it's Phil's time to be the deputy mayor again. I'm not sure how he got away with it back in 2020, being such a young gun in this political business. For this role, I actually have no preference at all. Sorry to say, none of you guys won me over enough. Oh, that's too bad. Maybe Gary. Or, got it, Michelle for her birthday present. There you go. Thank you.
Any more?
No other speakers, sir.
Okay, so I'll, unless there's discussion, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the regular rotation. Yeah, I'm going to take Michelle's second. You can't second your own. Please, yeah, it's her birthday. All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Yay. And I'd like to thank Steve for his service. Excellent job. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 9 is a report on the community risk assessment and standard of cover. I'll ask Fire Chief Coe to please introduce this item.
Mr. Mayor, as he's coming forward, I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction as part of the 2023 City Council Action Plan under the public safety priority. One of the outcomes, or one of the things that you wanted to see done, is the completion of a standard of cover community risk assessment. So the study's been worked on since beginning of about the end of summer, and we all know that our call volumes can be high, and we know that some of our stations are heavily impacted. We also know that we haven't expanded our fire department staffing for quite a while, and I know the council has talked about this during goal setting session, that we need to do something, but what is the thing, right? Because each of those things is an expensive proposition. And so gathering data and getting input from an outside organization can help provide some clarity to that. So the purpose of that is to do just that. So this will help look at some short-term goals and some long-term goals. Although the report is not very thick, it's rich with data. There's a lot of information in it. What I'm going to recommend this afternoon as part of this agenda item is that Chief Coe and our consulting company present a high-level overview of the report, allow the City Council to ask some of the questions that you may have and have a discussion. But I would recommend that we actually reconvene this conversation at a special City Council workshop sometime in February. I know we have State of the City in January. We have our goal-setting session in January. So it's kind of impacted. But I think in February we can really roll up our sleeves, get our fire professionals involved, and talk about what is our long-term vision and how to get there, and what are some interim steps that we can do to relieve some of the pressure on our staff. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Chief Coe for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Good afternoon, Mayor Wells, respected members of the council. I'd like to introduce you Mr. Jeff Stone. He is the project manager from Emergency Services Consulting International, and he was the one who was running this project, putting it together. And so I'm going to turn it over to him, and then we open it up to some questions at the end.
Thank you, Chief Coe. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Good afternoon. Good to meet y'all again. When we were here a month or so ago, we spoke with all of y'all. As Chief Coe mentioned, our company is ESCI, Emergency Service Consulting International. Just a brief background, we're about a 50-year-old company. We were created in the Pacific Northwest back in the mid-'70s, and they grew across the nation. In 2008, the International Association of Fire Chiefs purchased the company, and we are now a nationwide consulting company for public safety, predominantly fire department, but we also help police departments, and EMS agencies as well. Myself, I just retired after 30 years of service in the fire department, working for both a county and city departments, and as my last 8 years was a fire chief. So my background, along with all our other, I'm actually the youngest of our consultants. The others have 35 and 40 years, so we try to diversify ourselves with as much experience as possible. ESCI, as I mentioned, we cover everything in all aspects of the public safety. One of our goals, the projects we perform, we do planning services, risk assessments. Obviously, that's the project we did for y'all here in El Cajon. And pardon I'm from Georgia, so I probably say some things that y'all may not understand. I try to catch myself. Obviously, public safety agents management, and then we also have recruiting and testing and actually administrative positions of one of our divisions. So moving forward, as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, the project we had was a community risk assessment, and everybody understands, we hear that word, but to actually understand what that is, and for everybody in the audience, this is actually the brief definition of it. It's a process of assessing hazards, vulnerabilities, risk, ability to cope, preparing coping strategies, and finally preparing a risk reduction options implementation plan by the local community. What do we call risk? Risk are obviously the things that we immediately think of, fire hazards, hazmat, natural disasters, anything like that. But the risk assessments actually goes further than that. It also includes things such as unmanaged or unexpected population growth, construction booms, infrastructure demands. So all those things culminate together to how that affects an agency and how they operate within a community. And our project was a twofold. So we had to do a community risk assessment, and then we do what we call as a standard of cover. And that standard of cover is basically a playbook for the local agency, in this case for the El Cajon Heartland Fire Rescue Service. And a standard of cover basically consists of decisions made regarding the placement of field resources in relation to the potential demand placed on them by the type of risk and historical needs of the community. That outcome must be demonstrate the lives are saved and properties that are protected. So we base ourselves on a national standard of, anybody that's familiar with public safety, lives, property, and the environment. And that's exactly what that standard of cover bases everything upon, is how can we, the Heartland Fire Rescue, provide that to the El Cajon community. One of the questions that came along is, where do we pull our data from all this? We've spent the last several months talking, as y'all know, I spoke with y'all when we were here on our site visit. We spent the last several months talking with different members of the fire department, as well as other members of your staff and city and staff, and including the community development, UGI's personnel. But we also use open data sources. We rely heavily on GIS. Esri, which is one of the biggest GIS companies in the nation, they have a open source where we look at the demographics, regional data for our population. We also couple that with the U.S. Census data. We've talked with your community development directors as far as what y'all say your population is, and we culminate those together as what the actual population is, what your service area is. Then we also use open data sources, and then also ArcGIS has a special function of it called the Living Atlas of the World. So all that populates together, as I mentioned before, unexpected population growths and predictions. So with that, we use historical data from the past 10 or 15 years. We use the call and run logs of the fire department and the types of incidents they go to, and then we project those out, and that's where we come up with recommendations and estimations of what the risk may be in the next future. And we can look at that in a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year increments. The standard of cover, this is a huge formula, and there's a document there that Mr. Mitchell said that y'all would definitely get into. It's about a 30-page document that goes into every type of call that the city of El Cajon and Heartland Fire respond to and handle. You'll notice up here on the chart, it's everything from technical level calls to hazmat calls, wildland fires, fire, EMS calls, and they're broken down into different categories of high, medium, and low. Overall, I can tell you, compared to the rest of the nation, Heartland Fire, especially here in El Cajon, you manage almost all these very well. We typically say anything below 25 or 30 points is a well-managed call. You're doing it well. You have the staff handles those calls properly. You'll notice the fire, a higher fire call, that is luckily there weren't any in our records over the past several years. This would be something as if a 10, 20, 30 story, if you had 2 or 3 blocks of El Cajon catch on fire, that would be considered a high priority or a high level fire. So luckily that hasn't happened, and hopefully it wouldn't, but hence it would take a lot more than El Cajon and everything. That's the reason why you have that outlier score of almost a 61, but it's few and far between. So as we went through and looked at all the risk, how they answered calls, what the projections were, and what they were coming up, we identified several high-level areas. One of the things that we see in the projection of the potential population coming along right now is with our service data, we saw that the projected calls right now in 2022 were 18,031. We jumped ahead to 2050, which is almost 30 years, and that call volume is a 120% increase, and that's a projection. We always like to project on the high side, and you can always come back down, but it's better to give you an idea of what the potential projection is over the historical data of the growth of the city and what those calls entail with that number of population of people. The next risk we identified that kind of goes along with the first risk is the potential of the infill and the growth that's occurring here in El Cajon. The state has incentives for developers to build El Cajon is, as I was told from, I think, most of y'all and from the members of the fire department and the fire marshal's office, it's a great place to live. Listening to the rest of the community here, it's very supportive. You're very diverse. You're very welcoming to everybody to come here. That's wonderful for people to come, but that brings people. So that causes growth, which causes more people, causes more calls, and it's just kind of a circular effect that keeps growing. But one of the issues that when you have this growth is the expansion. There's not really much more land to go outward, so what you have to do, you have to go up. With that, you have to make sure that there's capabilities of the department. Right now, I believe there's only a handful of maybe 4 or 5 story buildings. They're not much over that, maybe a few 6. As that growth continues, you'll start seeing 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 story buildings that's going to have people in it. Access to those buildings by the fire department, it's not as simple as coming running in the door right here and we're on the same level. If you've got to go 20 floors up to get somebody, that's going to take extra time. Also, parking the apparatus. Again, there's not a whole lot of places to move outward, so parking spaces are not available. So people tend to the concern of parking on the street around the building. So now it makes access to actually getting to the address a concern or a future concern for the fire department. All right. And then the last thing is that as that grows in those that have been in the military before or have any other public safety service, we concern ourselves of any type of management is considered a span of control. The ideal number is typically 5. Sometimes that can be stretched to 7. In a emergency situation, they really don't like that number to be 3 to 5 is the maximum of that. So one of the things that we're looking for, the recommendation is the potential for a new, another duty battalion for the Heartland Fire and potentially El Cajon right now because of the if the potential growth continues. As well as in the fire marshal's office with the infill, you're going to need to see more staff, which would need more supervision. Okay. Oops. And then one of the things that I can tell you, having been all over the country and other communities, I want to congratulate y'all on a pilot project that I was extremely enamored with, and just a few weeks ago I was in another community and I proposed y'all's the community nurse navigator program that y'all started, I believe 16, 17 months ago. I believe it's about a year and a half into it.
Actually, a little less than that.
A little less than that. Wonderful idea, wonderful way to combat the issues of that. Obviously there's some potential concern of the homeless and the mental health. All these things across the country are a draw on the public safety, not just the fire department, but all public safety. But allowing those at the point of a 911 call to have and talk to somebody and not rely on the emergency services to handle this. And not that it's not a concern, but it's being handled instead of sending out, fire trucks and ambulances and everything. So we totally recommend continue that project, and we would say even expand it further if there's any way possible and continue looking on it. And I asked Chief if I could, and I've shared that with other communities, and they're very, very interested in it. So I send my kudos to El Cajon for creating such a great, wonderful project. And the second one here, the review of low acuity EMS calls, those kind of go hand in hand. Right now, some calls are being what we call an alpha or bravo call. That's a very low acuity, going to help somebody that has fallen, a trip or a fall. Sometimes this does not require the need for an engine or a emergency response. And so just look at those as to maybe help reduce some of those, of that 18,000 calls right now, about 77% of that is EMS. If those can reduce the burden off of the fire department by some of those calls of the ambulance service handling or of some other method, that can be looked at. And we mentioned this earlier, this is also moving on, consideration of that additional duty battalion. That goes hand in hand in the supervisory roles of both the administration of the fire marshal's office, but also out in the field, the potential of another field supervisor. The next one, with the potential growth that is projected And the concentration, and this again, Mr. Mitchell can show this when you get into the reports, the data that we've shown, there's a large central collection of calls in between Station 6 and Station 8 in the north central area. And that predominantly is where there's a potential need in the future to look at maybe placing another station to handle the call volume. And it also shows that's where the growth of your housing and population is growing. And then the last one here, evaluate the staffing marshal. This is where we looked at, because of right now the duties that are held by the staffing or the fire marshal's office, they're stretched pretty thin with the amount of plan reviews and inspections that go on. The addition of a second deputy fire marshal to help relieve some of those high-level inspections and plans is a recommendation from us. And then we had some administrative recommendations that are internal, but we felt worthy of mentioning to y'all. You have a very robust weed abatement program here in California and on the western side of the country. It's obvious that wildfires are a very serious concern, and whereas in Georgia, where a small trash can fire or somebody drops something on a chain dragging and starts a grass fire is not a big concern to us. That can turn into hundreds of acres here, if not thousands. So the program that y'all started, talking with Chief Coe and through the Fire Marshal's office, we just would like to recommend continuing that and expanding that that program also to include some type of management software. This is also going on. I spoke with y'all when you were here before. Continue that expansion and collaborative purchasing. Anytime that use your neighboring communities, whether it be La Mesa or even San Diego or anybody around you. Anytime anybody's buying the same product, if you can buy that in bulk, we all know that you get a better deal. And if you're using the exact same product, everybody might as well use that as a cost saving, and it ends up ultimately being a cost savings to the citizens. And then the last thing, this is something that we see with all fire departments that is very rare, is a succession plan. It's great when you come in. Chief Coe does a great job here with the fire department. I commend y'all with his leadership. But it's obvious Chief Coe is not going to be here forever to lead the fire department. As they move along, we always like to see some type of succession plan for leadership in any organization. So that's one of the things that we would look and say, hey, continue on. They have somewhat of that in the fire marshal's office, and we just like to see that expand into the whole fire department. That is a very quick overview. The standard of cover is about a 29-page report, and our community risk assessment is about a 70-page report. I tried to cram all that into a few minutes and not take up your time because I know it was very valuable. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Nice report. Let me see if there's some questions. Michelle.
Hi, thank you. It was a really good report and a lot of information there. And thank you. Question on your recommendations, number 4, the 5th station for the northern part, where would that be?
So we don't have an exact location. I can't tell you that it needs to go to 5th and 3rd Street, and that's the best place for it. But we've got it inside the community risk assessment. You can see, when you see that map, there's a very localized area, probably within a 4 or 5 block area, that you can say, okay, we need to put it somewhere right here.
And would that be, Chief, maybe you might be able to answer that, would that be in addition to what San Miguel is already providing for in the north area?
Correct. Right now, so one of the areas that we're looking at is San Miguel Station 19 is providing a lot of our emergency response coverage in that area. However, we don't control that resource. Oftentimes, that resource is getting moved around internally by San Miguel.
Okay.
And that would be generally in that same vicinity.
Okay. I mean, San Miguel does a wonderful job in taking care of us. I live around the corner from that station. And so they do a wonderful job in being there. I have a lot of seniors including myself, but that we have to call. Somebody falls, we need help getting them up because we're all old and can't get them out of the bathtub. So we have to call San Miguel, and they're there within a minute or two, which is wonderful. But I agree, we don't control them, and it would be nice. I'm sure that there are other areas up in the northern part that could use that. So thank you. I just wanted to clarify it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you for the report. Very thorough, very data rich, and very helpful for us as we plan for the future. I do have some questions.
Okay.
The calls for service, you had two graphs, calls for service based on historical change and by population. I believe the one that you showed was a little concerning because it said it would grow from 18,000 to 40,000 by 2050. That would be, I think that graph was by historical change. And the other graph was not as drastic, from 18,000 to 20,000. Why do you, tell me the difference between those two.
So the historical change, so there's a couple reasons that currently right now our methodology when we use those two graphs, we put them in there because it's data, and everybody likes data, and here we compare all this. The population is a much more, I guess for lack of better terms, a reliable term. The first one, we've had the past 3 or 4 years with COVID. That really caused a lot of deflection in what normal call volume and normal response is. So while we can't sit here and pick apart every one, oh, was this really a COVID call or was this a normal emergency response call, we do know historically over the years that when you have more people, there's a certain percentage that's going to cause more calls, regardless of what goes on. And that has nothing to do with the type of whether it's, low income, high income, middle class, anything. Those number of people are going to generate a certain percentage of calls. So we tend to rely more on we use that as our estimation of what in the response of the population graph versus the other one because it's a little bit more. Now, yes, it is on a high side. That is a large jump, but as I said before, we tend to move towards, we want to give you the worst case scenario versus coming in and saying, well, you're only going to have 5,000 people show up, and then in 4 or 5 years you have a boom. And we couple that also with the theory of, with the state's incentives that's going on with infill, we thought the other was a little bit more appropriate, and you're probably going to be closer to that 40,000 mark than only, I think and I don't remember the number right off the top of my head, 22 or 23,000. It was only a few thousand people increase. We feel that that's really going to be a lot more than that.
Okay, interesting. The mutual aid, do you have that by station?
So yes and no. Without having the call data that we received, the way it comes in from the call center, it shows that mutual aid was received. And we know who it was received from. So we pull that out and that call data there. Now, I don't have on the other side of what they're running, all those individual communities.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking, or maybe I misunderstood what you're asking?
The total, for instance, in 2022, the total mutual aid given was 2,100 calls.
Yes.
The total mutual aid received was 2,600 calls. We received help 500 times more than what we gave.
Yes.
Do we know what part of the city that was occurring in, or do you just have as a whole?
As a whole, we could go in and break that out, and that's one of the things me and Chief Cove talked about over the past several weeks, preparing this, is that's kind of a high-level look. The data is there, and they could extrapolate out exactly, hey, there were 500 calls in Station 6s, or, there were 800 calls in. Again, there's, I can tell you, looking at it with the data, we did kind of overview it, and again, not to make it a 300-page document, we are limited to what we put in there. We just know that you received, 2,600 calls of mutual aid, and a lot of that concentration was from, San Miguel and Lakeside and those areas right there. And I do believe the page, I don't remember the page number offhand, forgive me, further back, it lists some of those others, what it was received individually.
Yeah, it's around page 59 or 60. San Miguel 19 gave us 1,000 calls. Lakeside 1 gave us 700. Let's move on to the engine or the proposed new station. In your report, you talk about putting an engine and a ladder truck in that station. Are you proposing those be additional apparatus to what we have today, or a shifting of apparatus to what we have today?
They would be additional. In the theory, we always recommend if you put a station in there, especially for a city with what you have, again, going back to the potentials of the infill and the growth, and definitely the vertical growth, those are going to require ladder trucks. Coupled with the overview look of what you're receiving on calls from mutual aid, we say put a station in there that has an engine and a ladder truck. Now, the caveat to that is you don't have to buy them all at one time, but it would definitely behoove anybody looking forward to the future 10, 15, 20 years, build a station that can accommodate those, and you may build a station and put an engine in there, and then 6, 7, 8 years down the road, okay, now we do have those 10, 15-story buildings that are going to require another ladder truck, and now we can look at purchasing them then.
It makes sense to build the station for future apparatus. For the past 5 years, 90% of our calls have been EMS calls.
Yes, sir.
And when we talk about the cost of a project, to add an engine and a truck for 90% EMS calls, I'm a little concerned that that's a mismatch. But to build the structure for future needs does make sense. I'm going to wrap up my time here with the Nurse Navigator program. I think it's working for the hospitals. I don't know that we got the volume that we thought we would get. Yeah, we thought we'd get something like 3,000 calls, and it would be quite a bit of our current volume. I think we're at 9 months, 10 months, we may be 300 or 400 calls. So I'm kind of like, do we really keep this program going for 304 calls, or should we shift it to the hospitals to make them, since they're the ones primarily benefiting from it?
Mr. Goebel, Chief Co has a little bit of data to share how effective it is or maybe lackluster it is, but I think that'd be helpful for the council to see.
Correct. So that's the second part of this presentation. Once you are done with questions for Mr. Stone, then I'll get into the nurse navigation portion of the
Sounds good. I will probably forward other questions that can be addressed in a follow-up addendum to the report. But the mutual aid by station is kind of a big deal because we need to know really what part of the city. If it's not happening in Fletcher Hills, but it's happening in Granite Hills, we need to know that, or vice versa.
The quick overview, again, the concentration of calls is between that northern central area. So we see that, most of your mutual aid is going to be coming from those communities just on the other side of your city limits right there. Again, they're all, with the report, the 60-some-odd page report, you kind of have to pull it all together and take it, and as you look over it, combine it all together instead of taking one piece and saying, okay, pull this, and then look at it as a holistic type of report and put it together. And it should make more sense. I know we talked when you were here or when I was here before. Looking at it all together, I think may help maybe understand it a little bit. The questions you're asking, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Council, we jotted down the questions, and the sooner we have, and if you have other questions, forward them our way, and we can start cranking out some data with the consultant. But the sooner we have that, I think the better our conversation can be in February, because it'll give us a chance to really dive in and get the data that's helpful. Like I said earlier, I know Mr. Ortiz has a question, but we don't want to take sort of this shotgun approach when all we need is a scalpel. And so the more data that we have, the more information we have, I think the more precise decisions that you can make that will have the biggest impact.
Thank you, Jeff and Chief Koch. A quick question. It was from the public that I'm going to relay and just make sure the public knows. The workshop that we're going to have in February can be attended by the public. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'm going to recommend that we probably do it in a more informal setting. So like in the police community room or the Ronald Reagan.
Great.
But the community is invited to attend. In fact, the more voices we have at it, probably the better.
Great. Councilmember Goebel came with a lot of my questions, and I guess these questions and comments should be forwarded to our workshop because they don't need to be answered in depth now. But I don't want our focus to be just catching up, as Councilman Goebel and the report saying. San Miguel, Lakeside, they're covering a lot of our city's calls. And I don't want our focus to be just catching up. I want it to anticipate growth. So 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road, the city's not doing this all over again. We can kind of make sure that we're taking care of it now for the future. And I don't know if we'll ever see 20-story buildings in El Cajon. I hope we don't. But if we do, our station should be 20 feet high instead of 12 feet high or whatever the parameters are for that kind of apparatus. The other question I had is one of the recommendations regarding duty chief. That was the position? Is that right?
And the study recommends additional duty battalion chief.
Duty battalion chief, and that would be below you but above our captains. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Can we, in the workshop, can you bring some of the areas that they would be overseeing and how your role or the captain's role are kind of mismatched or not covering everything that could be covered, and kind of we can go into depth with that with the workshop?
Mr. Ortiz, I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that should be a recommendation in the study. Sorry, Mr. Stone. This is not even a level that the city manager deals with. This is a chief level issue.
Okay.
Right now, we're a little bit unique in that we have segregated our duties. A lot of cities, their duty battalion chief will also handle administrative things. Through Heartland, we have designated battalion chiefs that just handle administration. So if we were to shift duty responsibilities to another battalion chief, we'd probably also shift administrative duties, which probably wouldn't help in the long run. I think the bigger question is, do we have the right complement of management right now, the right number of management?
For our stations.
Right. And how those are divvied up or responsibilities divvied up, that's a chief discussion or decision.
Okay.
I think what the council's decision is, are we getting adequate coverage? And I think the study helps identify that.
Right.
And I think you need to hold staff accountable to make sure that coverage is occurring.
Right.
But to get into which position does this,
Right.
and are they doing administrative work or duty work, I think that's way getting into the weeds, even at the city manager level, to be honest with you.
Okay. Thank you. Last, I don't know. San Miguel is covering a lot of our Station 19, it looks like. 1,200 in 2018, 900, 1,000, 900. I don't know what percentage of their calls are City of El Cajon proper, but would it be possible in expanding Station 19 to include some of our staff at Station 19 instead of building a whole new property, a whole new station? My thought is if we could explore saving money, and if there's room there for us to grow, if all they need is a couple more apparatuses and there's room, or we could build there instead of acquiring a property and then building it from scratch. So I don't know what that looks like, but something to think about down the road to save money.
Anybody else? A quick question. So I'm involved in an organization called Sandag, and one of the criticisms of Sandag is that they're planning lots of expensive fixes to problems based upon current technology. Will the technology of fire stations and fire trucks and all that be changing significantly to the point where we're going to need different kinds of buildings, or is that going to be? You're looking at me like that's a strange...
I'm trying to process what you're asking. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I don't really know much about the evolution of fire trucks. Is the technology that's coming, with electric vehicles and all the other technology changes that are coming, are they going to be significant changes, or are they going to be pretty much fire trucks going to look the same as they always look?
I don't think you're going to see probably some of the things of your other project that you work with. I don't think you're going to see those kind of technological changes with fire apparatus. We do have electric vehicles, but they still require a driver, an operator, the firefighters.
So the station should look the same into the future?
The biggest thing is if you move to an electric fire truck, you have to have, just like if you have an electric vehicle, you have to have some type of charging station in it. But other than that, no, the actual functionality and operational capacity of the fire truck, I do not see that being any type of technological. There's a firefighting drone out there, but it's like $300,000, and you still got to have some guy, and it's only good for 20 feet. So, you know, that's not something that's realistic right now.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Is there a second part to this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the second part of this presentation is just giving a quick update on El Cajon Community Care, or this is the pilot program for nurse navigation that we started in, well, it went live January 31st this year. And so this is a 9-month update. Since the inception of the program on January 31st through November 10th, we have nurse navigated over 500 callers at this point. 96% of these cases managed did not clinically require rapid response from first responders, and that reducing costs for responses and maintaining our availability to respond to more serious, more acute emergencies. So we're starting to get a little bit more data why the people who are eligible for nurse navigation or for El Cajon Community Care on the lower level acuity calls, why they are accessing 911. And so here's a quick breakdown, and all this data is coming from GMR, who is the vendor who is providing this service. So 44% of the callers perceived that they had a life-threatening emergency. 33% of the callers had no other transportation options, and 21% did not know of other options or could not get an appointment to see a medical professional. And as far as the payer class goes, and here's a quick breakdown. So 33% of the callers were Medicare, 31% were Medi-Cal, 20% were others, so that might be VA and different programs. 14% were commercial health insurance, and then 2% were uninsured. So here's a quick estimate of what the cost savings would be overall on the system. And obviously this is not exact science because a lot of it is just extrapolated and trying to figure out what the cost is. But based on GMR's calculations, they believe that over the 9-month period, there's cost savings to the system of $372,000. And so we kind of tried to back out, you know, what are the costs for the fire department as far as, you know, the calls that we did not end up having to respond to the lower acuity level calls. And so this is a very conservative estimate, but we're looking at about $77,000 to the fire department. And last but not least, one of the things that was identified is that the program is promoting equity of care across the city by providing services to traditionally underserved communities. And this is kind of laid out in the heat map that we were provided by the vendor. And so that was a quick update on El Cajon Community Care, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
Thanks, Chief. Once again, a good report. So that's a pretty high percentage, I think. And my question is there any way that we maybe could partner with some of the local community clinics to do PSA spots on the radio? like they do in Mexico. If you listen to 91X or you listen to another station that is based in Mexico, they have all kinds of PSAs about, oh, if you want to run for this, you need to do this and don't let anybody bully you. If you, don't do fentanyl because of blah, blah, blah. And they give all kinds of instructions, and they're on the air all the time. And I'm just wondering if that's something that we could maybe do, partnering with another, like a healthcare center, radio station, and kind of get these PSAs out and educate the public a little at a time.
Well, that's a great question, Councilmember Mitchell. We're actually really fortunate to have a great partnership with Grossmont Healthcare District, and they have been really helping us out getting the word out. We partnered with San Ysidro Health. We did probably half a dozen plus community outreach programs over the past 9 months, and we continue those efforts with health education outreach.
Hi, Chief. Good information. Thank you. Let's go back to slide 1, if you could. Then slide 2. There you go. So 500 callers, 96% managed did not clinically require rapid response. You're not saying that 96% of the 500 callers ended up avoiding fire department EMS call, are you?
No. So there is still a certain percentage who ended up going to the emergency department. And there's a couple different reasons. One of the reasons is community clinics and different places where people would be able to go during during normal hours. Those facilities are not available during after hours. So they will end up having to go to the emergency room after all. But what it's telling is it wasn't necessarily us sending out our resources to take those people to the emergency room. There's either the lift component or there is an opportunity to use a lower level ambulance transport that is non-urgent. So the system breaks down. It's similar to police departments' call stacking. Based on the severity of the caller's problem, they might be waiting up to 5 hours for an ambulance to come and take them to the facility that they need to get help.
Okay, thank you. We know that this is a voluntary program, so a caller calling 911 is told, hey, would you like to talk to a nurse navigator? And it appears 500 people said yes. Do we have any idea how many people said, no, I want a 911 response?
We don't have exact numbers. The feedback that we're getting from our dispatch center is about 90+% of the people who have been offered the service, they take the service. Some of them do come back, and I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but I believe it's less than 10% who end up coming back into the 911 system, the ones who have called and end up calling back and wanting a 911 response.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Chief, so you mentioned the $77,000 in cost savings,
Correct.
and the program costs about $100,000 a year?
Correct.
So we're pretty close. Do you expect that there's potential to increase those cost savings so that it becomes revenue neutral at some point?
That's the goal. That's one of the things that we have been working at. And one of the things that we're dealing with, this is a pilot program. So this is very unique. This is a first program of its kind in the state. And we're dealing with a lot of local EMS and state EMS agencies who regulate this type of program. So we started off very conservative. We wanted to make sure that we did not have a program that was failing, so the people who end up getting navigated would get the appropriate level of care and they would not fall through the cracks. So as we've been working over the last 9 months, we have staff here who have been working tirelessly trying to tune it up where we can open it up to more and more callers. And one of the benefits that we've had last year is we ended up getting a medical director for the communication center who is able to work with the county EMS, where we're now expanding some of the different call types that are able to be navigated.
So you have a medical director?
This is a shared medical director for heart, yes.
So if a nurse runs into something that they don't feel like they can handle, can they call for advice from that medical director?
The medical director isn't necessarily available 24/7, but the medical director will review the call and make adjustments.
Yeah, work on protocols and...
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of this program, and I think that once people get more used to it, you'll see increasing cost savings every year. It's like any other new program, especially when it comes to EMS or medicine of any kind. People are going to be nervous about it at first. I think that as they become used to the idea of it, they're going to be more open and receptive to taking the advice of the nurse and not necessarily running off to the ER all the time. So, anyway, that's for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that. Any other questions for the chief? Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Do we have any speaker cards?
No speaker card, sir.
Okay. So this is just an information item. Does anybody have any more discussion about it?
Just one more. I love Councilmember Mitchell's idea about a community-based education program. I don't know if we can lean on our Grossmont Sharp partners that can bring a packaged education program together for the public of when to call 911, and then that can be translated into the various languages that our residents speak in El Cajon.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
My guess is that there are probably grant opportunities for this.
Right.
And we could probably partner with some of the local hospitals to see if they can help us develop a grant.
Exactly. And this goes back to the study that was done. When we go to this workshop, the other question that I would like to see, or the other question I'd like to see answered is, based on our mutual aid calls, what do we need? What kind of personnel and apparatuses do we need to catch up? So, do we need 2 squad trucks, an ambulance, and a fire truck? And then what's the cost of that? And then, so that's one question. The second question that I'd like to see answered is, based on projected growth of population within the city, what will we need? What do we anticipate? I think, I hope the study gave us the information to answer those questions, but at a glance, I don't know that that answer was given to us in the study. And I think that's really where most of my concern is the mutual aid calls. We're not taking care of our responsibility. The minimum standard of government's responsibility is fire and police. And so I think that would be my biggest objective in the workshop is, where's our mutual aid calls? What do we need? What will we need? And how much will it cost?
That's exactly why I think we need that extra time to figure that out. I think the study does give us the basic, as Councilmember Goebel said, data-rich data.
Yeah.
We can now look at that. I do think understanding where we're getting mutual aid by station would be valuable too.
Yep.
You overlay that with the map the existing maps in the study, and that will kind of help pinpoint the basic geographic area of where another station would need to be, if that is the solution, right?
Right.
And I think if we can identify what the long-term goal is, which would be the projection, because if you're going to build one station, you may as well build it the right way. And then you figure out how do you staff it with what type of staff. Is it more squads? Is it a full engine? Is it an engine in a truck? All those types of things. And there's some short-term goals. There's some medium-term goals. Even if the council today said, staff, go build a station. Well, that's still 5 years out, right? You got to find property, you got to negotiate property, you got to build it, you can do all the RFP for it, you got to hire, you got to find people to man it, right? So we have to come up with some solutions sooner than 5 years from now, and I think that would be the purpose of the workshop.
And I mean, I know this is pie in the sky, but I don't know that there's any property in the north area, city proper, that's up for sale that could house a station. So are we limited to property within the city, or could we potentially purchase a property outside of the city for a station? Because that border of the city kind of zigzags, and so that's another question that might need to be answered. Could we go outside of the city to purchase a property for our use?
Okay. So just looking for a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Before we get into item 10, I have to recuse myself from this because my company does business with the company that is selling the property. So I will recuse myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On item 10, real estate sale agreement with 405 East Lexington Avenue. Staff, like to present this to us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the council. Back in August earlier this year, the City Council directed staff to negotiate the purchase of 405 East Lexington Avenue and the current owner, San Ysidro Health. On September 21st, both the parties came together and approved or executed a letter of intent to purchase the property. One of the things that two things the letter of intent did is said, one, we're going to strive to work toward a purchase agreement or a real estate sale agreement, and it also identified the specific purchase price, which is $2.5 million and some change. Since the execution of the letter of intent, that real estate agreement has been negotiated. Both parties have found it acceptable, and now we're presenting it to both of our governing bodies. If the council were to approve the agreement, that's when the due diligence period begins. It's a 30-day escrow. Our staff is ready to go out and start some inspections. We've already done some of the paperwork inspections to understand some of the ramifications of the building. Assuming we find nothing of concern, staff would recommend we close escrow as soon as possible, but we have a 30-day escrow. If we do find concerns that warrant enough concern, we'll bring that back for City Council discussion. Just want to point out, because we're using Federal American Response Plan Act funds, there are some provisions that we've never included in a purchase agreement that include that federal acquisition language that's required by federal law. So staff's here to answer any questions that you have, and if there are none, or once those questions are answered, staff would recommend that the council adopt the resolution approving the purchase agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Angela, do we have any speaker cards on the item?
Yes, sir, we do. One from Truth.
All right, I wasn't actually sure what I'm supposed to think about this item. We got the city buying real estate from San Ysidro Health using over $2.5 million in debt dollars from the American Ruination Plan Act. I've seen worse uses of these debt dollars before. I've also seen one better use, a temporary fire station. But government involved in the real estate market, I cannot accept. I find it very unusual and just wrong. I think it could even be argued that the city won't really own it since it's purchased with all cash from the federal government. Also want to point out for the public's knowledge that the letter of intent says, quote, the city of El Cajon, a California charter city and municipal corporation, end quote. For anyone still stuck in fairy tale land, the reality is that these entities masquerading themselves as governments are really corporations. That's what to be incorporated really means. It also means that our true governments have essentially been usurped and replaced with these businesses that frankly don't need our input to continue, just our taxes. But anyway, I'm not actually against the use of this building to be something better, like the small business incubator idea. I just don't like the idea of government involved in real estate. I see enough of that already, but thank you.
Clarification for city staff. There was a comment there making that we won't own it. We will own this building, correct?
Yeah, we'll own title to the building, correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other speaker cards?
No other cards, sir.
Okay, very good. I'll kick to council. Any questions? Comments?
So once we go through, will we have, maybe Mr. Mitchell can answer this, if we go in and we find that there's going to be a problem, how much time do we have to back out?
It's a 30-day escrow, so we'll do inspections pre-holiday City Hall closure. So we'll get that taken care of this next week. That will give us time, if we do find some problems, to renegotiate anything part of the agreement. If that can't be accomplished, then we'll bring that back for City Council consideration. But we have 30 days to back out.
But if we haven't signed, we have yet to open escrow, correct?
Correct. We can't open escrow until the council approves this agreement. Once you approve this agreement, we can then open escrow. Once escrow opens, we can start the inspection of the property.
But that's kind of my point. Today is the 12th. If we approve it, it gets drafted up this week, and we're talking through the holidays, trying to get an appraisal.
No, that's all taken care of. Appraisal's done. We relied on one of their appraisals. The agreement's already drafted. The one that you see before you is 100% approved by both legal counsels. So once the council, if the council were to approve this, we're ready to do open an escrow this week and start inspections.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I found that neither party is using the services of a broker, and that saves the taxpayers up to $150,000 in customary broker fees. But because we were able to talk agency to agency and work this out, that saves taxpayers a lot of money. So that's a very good move. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. I wanted to thank San Ysidro Health for operating in good faith. We appreciate all you've done in this process to make it easy, streamlined, and transparent for the taxpayers and our city. So we appreciate that.
I think it's also a good use of the building. We're in negotiation with the Chaldean Community Council for their existing tenancy to carry over under a new lease with the city. That particular agency is very effective in helping perhaps 1 in 5 people in El Cajon who are of Middle Eastern and Chaldean descent. So this would provide a very low-cost, almost no-cost option for a social service agency to provide services to up to 20% of our city. That's a good use of this money. And the small business incubator, again, trying to help people succeed in America by lowering the cost of entry with perhaps a low rent thing there. I think this is a great use of taxpayer money to help our existing residents and future residents. So job well done on this. I'll look to the council if anybody wants to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by a 4-0 vote, with Mayor Wells recusing himself as he does business with the seller of the property.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's grab the mayor, and then we'll continue on with item 11.
Okay, item 11.
Thank you, Council. If I can get my PowerPoint slide up, please.
Item 11 is the award of RFP number 023-24, Small Business Incubator Operator. And I'll ask our city manager to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Also earlier this year in September, on September 28th, the city issued a request for proposal for a small business incubator operator service. The purpose of the incubator is to help either startup or new businesses that are currently in El Cajon to grow and expand also into El Cajon or East County region. The city is not contributing any financial resources to the incubator operator at this time, nor to any of the business participants. But what our role is to provide approximately 3,000 square feet of space, assuming the building that the City Council just considered does close escrow. That would be the proposed site for the business incubator. The city would contribute about the city would receive about a dollar per year in lease payment for that, plus utilities. One proposal was received by the November 7th deadline, and the proposal was reviewed by an independent three-party our three-person evaluation committee. The committee looked at experience and its business plan, the types of services that would be offered, the financing plan, the metrics that they would be using to assess their success, and also readiness to operate. After the evaluation, staff recommends that the one proposal received from Chaldean Community Council best meets the city's needs. And so with that, staff would recommend that the City Council consider this as part of the motion to move forward. If the City Council chooses to do so, it's a two-part, but can be done in the same motion. One, it would determine that this is exempt from CEQA, and then second would be to adopt the resolution, which would authorize the city manager to start negotiating a lease agreement for this 3,000 square foot space. Staff would recommend that the lease agreement include some performance measurements that would be required so we can assess the effectiveness of the incubator program and to ensure that our property is being used for the best use for the community. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that you have or to address any things that were not addressed in the report.
Questions? Michelle?
Question. I know that we would not be running the program, but who decides who gets to participate in the incubator program and to make sure that it's spread out equitably across the city? We have several communities here, Chaldean, Arabic, Hispanic, and others. And I want to make sure that if we were to go through this, that each community has an opportunity to send someone to that or to participate in it.
That's a great question. So one of the incubation process includes an application, then there's an initial screening, and then there's board approval. The board as it's currently constituted includes 10 different members of the community. They range from individuals like Rick Wilson from the Chamber of Commerce, James Sly from the ECEDC, I'll just throw out a couple other names of people you would know. Ibrahim Ahmed from Supervisor Joel Anderson's office, Dr. Gary Woods from the Grosse Mountain School District. So there's a wide variety of people that would be part of that screening and that governing body. One of the things that I would actually recommend is one of the metrics that we look at is an understanding of who applied, where do they come from, are they here locally, and who was accepted. So we have a good understanding of the acceptance rates. I think it would also be helpful to understand as part of what I'll recommend is probably a quarterly report, different outreach efforts that they're making to reach different members of the community and make sure that that's a wide net being cast out.
Thank you. It sounds like you've got a good board on there, a good selection of people on the board. Those who have been in positions that service a lot of people in various communities in our city. So thank you for that, and that's it.
Gary?
Well, I know a lot of the board members that the city manager talked about, and they're all really great people. They love this community. They're heavy hitters, very influential, and I trust their judgment.
You know, I'll give you a story about a lady that this would be perfect for. A resident contacted me. She's helping an Afghani woman try to become her own business, own her own business. She's currently a seamstress at Nordstrom's down in Mission Valley, but she'd like to have more of a clientele out here in East County, and she'd like to develop her own business. But she doesn't want clients coming to her home for obvious reasons when it comes to fitting and things like that. She just needs an office space to meet with clients and to decide how to best tailor their clothes. And she just needs a place to go until she can build up enough business to perhaps rent her own space somewhere in the city. This is a great example of trying to help somebody who has immigrated to this country, who wants to do better in the American dream. And we're providing a low-cost option for this person to really become a very productive member of society, and that's a great example of what this incubator could help her do.
Bill?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Mr. Goebbels, I am so excited about this project. I mean, this incubator embodies what the American dream is about. Is you come to the United States, or you've grown up in the United States, you put your work in, you have an idea, and you try your best, and the community comes around to help you accomplish that dream. I'm a business owner. I bootstrapped my own business by myself. My community came around and helped me. And an example, another one I'll give, is Connor Tour from Tour Knives. He started his company in his garage, machining knives by himself, and now he leases 20 or 15 spaces in El Cajon with a huge manufacturing operation, only hires veterans, trains them from zero experience to be competent machinists. And, you know, how much bigger could Tour Knives have been had he had some help on the front end with some space and maybe some grants or some HR help, some legal help, some payroll help. And that's really what this incubator is going to do. So I couldn't be more excited about this and all the businesses that are going to flourish from it and getting reports. So I can't wait to see.
Okay.
Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I taught a class down at Southwestern College about 10 years ago, and it was called Starting and Operating a Small Business. And about 70% of my students were immigrants. And they really had a fire in their belly for, you know, succeeding in that American dream, because a lot of the countries they came from, it was almost impossible to start a small business. And they would come back to me after a couple of years and say, "Hey, Mr. Kendrick, I've got this business now, and I'm employing 10 people and doing really well. You know, thank you for all that you taught me." And that was a really great feeling. And I think we have that kind of opportunity here with very successful businessmen that are involved with this business incubator. And sometimes, you know, you just need somebody that's been successful to tell you how to do things, from getting your resale license from the state and opening the proper accounts. Because some of these people, they're like really good cooks, but they don't know a whole lot about business or making a successful business, and this will help them tremendously. So I'm all for this.
Great. Are there any speaker cards on this item?
Yes, sir. We have one card submitted by Kay Turpin and Dr. Barca.
Hello, Dr. Barca.
Thank you so much for your consideration to start the El Cajon Small Business Incubator. We are very excited about doing this project. As all of you mentioned, there are many, actually more than 1,500 incubators in America today, and really help many businesses growing. Some of these businesses now are worth billions of dollars. They started in an incubator project. And so this is an opportunity for our city, for our community, to build this concept and develop our economy further, and create wealth, boost economy, and create jobs in El Cajon. So we are very excited, and thank you to all of you. And as our councilman Steve mentioned, the lady, her name is Samira, she actually approached us. And she came from Afghanistan 2 years ago. She fled the country, and now she's living in El Cajon. And when she found out about the incubator idea, she came to our office, and she said, "I want to be a part of this incubator. I want to build my own brand. I want to be a fashion designer, and I want people to know about me." So really, it's an exciting concept that we are going to work together with the city, with the Graham, and with all of you, that we are going to have this incubator growing over time and building more business in El Cajon. Thank you so much.
Let me see if there's any questions for you.
For those of you that don't know, Dr. Barca came here a number of years ago with almost nothing and created a multi-million-dollar business, Cal Biotech. Do I have that name right?
Yes.
Employing very many people, and has been very generous in this community and training people, and hiring many, many people that probably wouldn't have gotten jobs otherwise. So he's an integral part of this group, and I think that's really great that he's giving back to the community yet again.
Thank you so much. And as Councilman Gary mentioned, I started actually 30 business beside Cal Biotech. I did start 30 businesses in El Cajon, and I want to do more. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Barca. Okay, bring it back to the council. Any more discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah. I'll move to determine that the project is exempt from CEQA and adopt the resolution outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Congratulations. Look forward to seeing it. Item 12 is the 2023 Annual Pension Status Report, and I'd like to ask our staff to tell us about this item. Hey, Clay.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, distinguished members of the City Council. My name is Clay Shane. I'm the Director of Finance for the City of El Cajon. I'm here today to present the latest installment of the Pension Status Report. This report is required by the city's pension funding policy. Specifically, the policy requires that staff presents a summary of each of the two pension plans' funding status, any new amortization levels, present it in a public City Council meeting, and then make any recommended actions or budget adjustments. We'll jump right into this chart that I know you all know so well at this point. This is a 20-year history of CalPERS investment returns. Unfortunately, that frequently is the lead story on the subject of pensions for us. As you recall, the last time we were here on this subject, it was coming off the very successful 2021 investment season where CalPERS delivered a staggering 21.3% return. We were very cautious at that time because we already knew what was going to happen and had happened actually at that point in 2022, where CalPERS had turned around and lost 6.1%. How that affects our balances at the end of June 30th, 2022, that's the most recently completed actuarial reports, the total liability for the two pension plans combined is approximately $664 million, of which we have assets of approximately $549 million set aside. The difference between those two, of course, is the unfunded liability for the two pensions. Currently, it's $115.2 million. If you recall, last we were discussing this, we were very leery about the very, very good news we were receiving from the 2021 reports because we knew how this was going to shake out. And broadly speaking, the very good year in 21 was offset by the bad year in 22. So I think the ending balance here in 2022 is probably about right where we really are with the plan. Combined at the end, the total funding status was approximately 82.6%. Our pension policy states that our targeted funding percentage is 90%, so we're a little bit below that, but we certainly want to stay in the ballpark. It's important when we're talking about the unfunded liability with CalPERS, though, that we do not lose sight of the fact that we have issued a considerable amount of pension obligation bonds to help on this subject. In 2021, we issued $147 million of bonds. By the end of 2022, we had already begun to service that debt. We have written down the principal balance by approximately $5 million and made the interest payments at the same time. All taken together, the CalPERS liability and the POB principal outstanding combined, we have a total pension-related debt of approximately $257.5 million. The 2022 valuation reports saw the addition of 5 additional amortization lines. This is kind of a unique situation. The first one, from the safety plan, a benefit change, was also present in the miscellaneous plan as well. However, it was all grouped together in that bottom line for partial fresh start. In 2022, SB 1168 was passed that increased the lump sum payout to someone, a retiree at death, from $500 to $2,000, and that cumulatively increased the safety plan of about $175,000. The most significant component, of course, on these are the two investment gain loss lines. Safety is called out individually with the $52.4 million addition to our liability. That, however, in the miscellaneous plan is mixed up in the partial fresh start line. At the end of 2021, there were very, very little left as far as amortization bases in the miscellaneous plan. So when they rolled in the 22 levels, they didn't have enough to work with, so they ended up combining it together. Unfortunately, that kind of hides the total impact from the investment loss in the miscellaneous plan. But as you can see, the 5 lines together added approximately $100 million to our 2 plans, with the vast majority of that coming from the investment loss. Included in the actuarial reports is the anticipated employer contributions to the 2 plans. The 2025 balances is the only thing that's required at this time. The years projected beyond that are informational. Each year they only go so far as saying what next year's bill is. The rest is just what they are anticipating at this time. Next year we expect to have approximately $6 million citywide of unfunded liability amortization payments. That does not include the normal cost, which is going to be approximately another $6 million. Debt service payments are another $9 million on the POBs, and we've already discussed an additional payment in next year of approximately $3.5 million. So in 2025, we anticipate total contributions to the 2 plans to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million. Part of the pension funding policy is a discussion of the allocation of additional resources. In short, this basically states that when we have excess money, we should consider contributing it to the 2 plans. However, we already have authorized the inclusion of a plan of additional contributions. We discussed it at last year's mid-year report. That carries on for 2 more years. Therefore, we are not recommending any additional action at this time. However, I suspect given the gravity of this topic, we will revisit it again at presentation of the 5-year business plan and mid-year report in February or March of 2024, and then again in presentation of the FY25 budget in June. Otherwise, the next update for the pension status report is scheduled for the fall of 2024. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Clay. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Shane, for your report. Question, are we doing everything that we can to mitigate the unfunded portions? I apologize if that's an ignorant question, but...
It's certainly not an ignorant question. The word choice of mitigate is an interesting one. I hate to use the word victim because we certainly don't have a bystander role, but the management of the pension plan is done by CalPERS. That is the agency we have effectively contracted with to administer these plans for us. So they give us a bill every year, and we have very little power to affect what that bill looks like. There are a number of things that we have done that City Council has approved that helps lower that overall exposure. The issuance of the pension obligation bonds helps an awful lot. We fortunately, with where interest rates are now, the rate that we issued the bonds at look like in hindsight an incredible deal, and that will go a long way. However, the timelines here are extremely long, and it takes a long time to see that. Additionally, every year we progressively see more and more employees join the city's workforce that are PEPRA employees that have lower benefits, which does bring down that overall liability as well. But the short answer is we pay what they tell us we need to pay, and when we can, we try to get ahead of that so we're not paying interest on the debt.
Thank you for explaining that to me, because I didn't realize that, like I said, it was kind of an ignorant question because I just don't know. All right, thank you.
More questions? Steve.
Can we go back to the second slide? So June of 2022 is a year and a half ago, right? So just the S&P 500 as one benchmark is up 12% since that date. And I know maybe our assets are not in such a risky position as the S&P 500, but even if we had half of that, say 6%, 6% on the $548 million in assets might be $30 million that we've actually grown in market value since that date. So our unfunded could drop from $115 million down to $80 million. I'm encouraged. Are you?
No, actually, I'm not. CalPERS has released their preliminary June 30th, 2023 investment returns, and they returned 5.8%, which is certainly a whole heck of a lot better than losing 6.1%. But their targeted returns are 6.8%. So when they fall short of that, it grows our liability. So that 1% shortfall, depending on how you choose to calculate it, cost us, if you're using liability as the base, approximately $7 million. And if you look at it, what our actual assets would earn, approximately $5.5 million. So that unfunded liability will grow, unfortunately, I expect, with the June 30th, 2023 valuation reports.
Because CalPERS is missing its targets.
And to be honest with you, they have an interesting thing on this, well, I think it's interesting anyways, on this chart. There's a very difficult to see probably on this screen dotted line that shows their 5-year moving average of returns. And when you look to see where that line is relative to the target, over the last 5 years, they're averaging on target. However, the timing of those up and downs, which especially in the last couple of years have been very wide swings, and it has been detrimental and a net impact.
I don't know if you know this answer, maybe city manager or assistant city manager. Is CalPERS board still limiting their investment opportunity based off of ideology?
I think the impact of that is far less than it once was. There was this is going back a couple of years, but there was a significant change on the representation on the board to try to break away from some of that. How successful they've been in enacting that, it's hard to say. Obviously, some investments you can't just get out of quickly, so it might be a while before we fully remove that influence on it, but I think they have been moving in that direction to lessen that impact.
Okay.
However, Vince and I were just talking, there is some new recent policy where CalPERS is divesting itself of all fossil fuel assets. So,
in all fossil fuel assets?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe, maybe not, probably not. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Clay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion, or would someone like to proceed with a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to receive the report.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, we're down to our last two administrative reports. Item 14 is for the award of an RFP number 027 through -24, Measure J polling services, and I'll ask our city manager to please introduce this item.
I think we're skip right over 13, please, Mayor.
Hey, see, I'm just kind of excited to get through.
Okay. Hopeful.
No. I wish there were more items. Okay. Item 13 is a request to host the Wall That Heals. I'll ask staff to please introduce this item. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and council members and city staff. My name is Adam Tronrud, City of El Cajon Parks and Recreation. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity today to tell you about the Wall That Heals. In 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund was dedicated the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Since its dedication, it has become one of the most visited memorials with over 5 million visits each year. Yet millions of others are still unable to attend the wall. In 1996, the VVMF recognized a need to provide a traveling version of the memorial, and the Wall That Heals was dedicated. To this day, this is accomplished through ongoing and close cooperation between the hosting organizations, their communities, and the VVMF. The Wall That Heals is the largest replica, the only one wholly owned and operated by a nonprofit organization, and the only one accompanied by the Mobile Education Center. Jeff Mueller has formed an all-volunteer committee and submitted Wells Park for consideration to host the Wall That Heals. The VVMF has notified Mr. Mueller that the City of El Cajon is a finalist for a spring 2024 date if approved by council. The committee will recruit volunteers and raise funds to pay for specific needs of the event. And Mr. Mueller is here today with some of his committee members in case you have any questions.
Hello, Mr. Mueller. Thanks for coming.
The wall would arrive on a Tuesday with setup taking place Wednesday, and the Display and Education Center would be open 24 hours a day, Thursday through Sunday. I have included a map of the proposed layout, and Wells Park meets the needs of the wall with parking, public transportation, and a large enough field to accommodate the size. So if you can refer to the wall, and I know it's, or to the map, I know it's difficult to see, but the blue box would be where the Mobile Education Center would be, and the red line across the multi-sports field is the legitimate length of the wall. It's quite impressive. And then I have a short video for you just to kind of show you what this does in communities.
It's a different experience to see it. I've seen a lot of pictures of it all over and done a lot of reading about it, but it brings back a lot of memories. But kids need something to stand up for, and this is part of it because everybody gives their life for something sooner or later.
I was a Vietnam era. Everybody that taught me anything in the Army were Vietnam veterans. They were my teachers and my mentors. I think this country owes them a great debt of gratitude for what they went through and what they did.
That's fantastic.
I did not make the video, but it is fantastic. So staff's recommendation would be that the City Council approves the use of Wells Park to host the Wall That Heals for 1 week in the spring of 2024, waiver of facility rental fees, and approval to operate overnight. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have, or if you have any questions for Mr. Mueller.
Let me see if there's any questions for you. Phil?
Thank you very much. This is incredible. I have family members that are Vietnam veterans, and unfortunately they passed. But my question is, you said this organization is a finalist, so is there still a selection process that needs to flesh out, or are we definitely going to host it here?
With council's approval, I feel extremely confident that that would happen.
Okay. Is there anything else we would have to do to push them over the edge to be selected? A resolution or something like that? Or
not at this time, no.
Okay. And with the fundraising, I know we're helping out with regard to waiver of facility fees. What other costs are associated? Would it be appropriate for the city to cover something if there's a gap that needs to be done to make sure that
I'd like
we're
to
there?
have Mr. Mueller answer some of that.
Hi, thank you for your time. I do have a committee of people that have kind of come together. I've never done anything like this before, so I've been working with Adam to get this done. I've spoken with Ms. Mitchell as well. As far as we're not really sure the entire extent of what we're going to need. We've literally known for a matter of hours that we have been selected for this. But we do need council's approval in order to put the rubber stamp on it and make sure that, A meets B. So we are on the list. If you go to the VVMF website, we're actually on the list right now. I will be getting a lot more information from them now that they've made this official announcement as of a few hours ago. But to answer your question, I'm not 100% sure at this point, but it will be all taken care of by fundraising, and I'll be working with Adam as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if the city could step in, if the fundraising options aren't possible, I don't know if it's appropriate we could put city funds towards it. Is that possible at all in this tight timeline, or?
I think so. I would recommend that
we figure out.
the committee try to do their best effort, and if there's a gap, maybe that's something that we can bring back for city council consideration.
Okay, great.
That would be great. Thank you.
And do we know where the next closest location is for the finalists? Because if it's nowhere in Southern California, I'd imagine that there's going to be it's a regional draw for all of Southern California.
From my research, and I'm not 100% sure about this, from my research, the last time, the wall has been here before. The last time, I believe it was 2016 on the deck of the Midway. But I don't believe it's been even in Southern California since then. It was in Menifee last April, but that was as close as it came to Southern California. This year, they're starting in Hawaii, but then they're moving to Baldwin Park, California, up in L.A., and then they're moving to Merced after that.
Okay, so it's going to be a regional.
This is the only thing in San Diego County.
Wonderful. Okay, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for doing this. I think it's timely that we just approved a location for our own Veterans Memorial here in the city. We're going to redo it, so it'll be a good primer for the draw and the outreach. And maybe Chris, our marketing manager, if and when we're selected, could get that video and promote it on our city's website so we
That'd
can.
be great. Thank you.
And social media. Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz, I can say Mr. Mueller just found out hours ago that if council does approve this, that we will be a site.
Wow.
And what's the date?
And we have tentative dates of the week of the 19th through the 24th, and the actual display, I believe, is the 21st to the 24th? 21st through the 24th.
Of April?
Obviously, if council approves that, of March.
Of March.
Sorry.
I was trying to see if we could tie it into Main Street or something, if it was the same, close to the same time, but March is March.
Your best, Michelle.
Thank you for this. My father did 3 tours in NAM. Brother-in-law spent time over there, and my neighbor as well. So this is very good to hear. I've never been able to get out to see the wall itself, so I'm excited for this and very touched to watch the video because it does mean a lot. Security. who will be providing the security? Will our police officers need to do that, or will you have 24-hour security?
I don't know quite yet. Again, I'm also awaiting to find out what parameters we'll need to. Well, let me step back. If it's approved that we're able to keep the park open 24 hours, I would like to know what your requirements are for that. If we need to get private security, we can do that. I don't know what is involved in having El Cajon PD do that, but I imagine that would be quite a bit of overtime.
Right. My other question is, have you reached out to VECA, the Veterans of East County Alliance? That is a organization through our Chamber of Commerce, which I'm involved with, and I believe some of our other members on the council are as well. And that's an organization full of veterans, business owners, and spouses and children of vets. And so we come together frequently. Plus, we have a lot of VFW. So I imagine that since this is a go, and I can't imagine us saying no as a council, that those would also be organizations that we could reach out to, and I think they would jump at the chance to be a part of this. And so just putting it out there.
That would be outstanding. I appreciate it. Actually, my volunteer coordinator, Judith, is here. She's going to be our volunteer coordinator, coordinating all the volunteers for both setup, for takedown, and so she would be the one to contact for that. I do have a website that's ready to launch, and once I get your approval, and now that I have EVMS approval, I can actually launch that website as well, and that'll have a lot of information there.
I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
And, you know, I was just thinking, just kind of putting it out there, my neighbor's son has played with Gary Sinise, the Lieutenant Dan band. So, you know, we might be able to get them to come out and do a little help. You never know. So please feel free to reach out to me if that's something that you'd like to do, because then I'll just hit my neighbor up and say, look, call your boy. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. And congratulations for preemptively. Are there any speaker cards on this item?
Yes, sir. We have one. Truth.
There needs to be lots of people speaking about this in support. That's my opinion about that. I'm going to say both of my parents are actually veterans, but not from Vietnam. I'm too young for that. So are they, I guess? I don't think any of us have actually seen the wall or a replica of it. And I think I remember back in 2016 talking to my dad about that. We had considered going to the Midway. I don't think we did. Yeah, I didn't go. I don't think he went either. So it would be great to see it somewhere. This is my best chance. If I'm not at a meeting, maybe I can actually go. So I'm in full support. $3,000. That's not too much money to have a great event that's going to bring the replica of the wall to this city and maybe some tourism. And Michelle, I like all of your ideas. I think you could definitely make it a big event and a big celebration of all the people that served. Because a lot of people don't even know about Vietnam. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit, and then I'll bring it back up. Because we could argue all day long about how Americans should have never been in Vietnam, along with all the other places around the world that they have been and are currently. But it doesn't change the fact that everyone willingly gave their lives in service of the United States government, believing that they were securing freedom for their fellow Americans. And despite political disagreements and media propaganda, no one from Vietnam deserved the disrespect that so many received when they came home. It was bad enough they suffered from Agent Orange, right along with the Vietnamese, and had to deal with the communists like Jane Fonda openly side with the enemy and put out propaganda that was aired to the soldiers during the war via the radio. There was also Project Shad, run by the CIA and the military, that dropped chemical agents on our soldiers without their knowledge or their consent. I would like people to look into that. And I would hope the major lesson of that event and every subsequent event since is that defending freedom begins at home. We're losing it here at a very high rate, and I don't see too many soldiers. There's some regular people out there like myself who go to all these places that they're stripping away freedom at a rapid rate. And luckily, it doesn't happen in El Cajon. That's why it's not a priority for me to be here. because I got other places that are way bigger fish to fry. I wish it wasn't so, but it is. But anyways, I think this needs to be passed right away so we can all start planning to go in March and have a big celebration and remember all of the people who gave their lives and, just risked it, trying for a real greater good, which is freedom. Whether, hey, we got it or not, they did mean it, and we didn't know the things that we know now, and hopefully could avoid these types of things in the future. But I look forward to hopefully having a chance to see the wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Truth. Okay. Any further discussion, or would somebody like to proceed with a motion?
A comment. I'd be honored to support this. So I'd like to make a motion that the City Council approves the use of Wells Park to host the Wall That Heals for 1 week in the spring of 2024, waiver of facility rental fees, and approval to operate overnight.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Excellent. Please keep us informed of where it's going from here. Thank you for coming, and thanks for all your work on this. Item 14 is for the award of RFP number 027 through 24, Measured Day Polling Services, and I'll ask our city manager to please talk to us about this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is an item that we've talked about in the past. As you know, during the last election, the city manager and I approached you having reviewed polling data that we contracted for that showed strong support for a renewal, or actually an expansion of what we call Proposition J. We brought forth to you to put on the ballot a half-cent, it was a full cent sales tax because we had such strong support based upon the polling that we had received. And this council went ahead and put that on the ballot, and it was defeated quite handily. And it was defeated by over 60% no vote. So we attempted to debrief why that was and didn't get a real satisfactory answer. But the point of the matter is that Proposition J accounts for approximately in the neighborhood of $14 million of general fund money for general city services. And so we do need to look for ways to extend or replace that. And so as we approach the 2024 election in the next 11 months, we are starting well in advance to try and get the most accurate take on where this community stands with an extension of the half-cent sales tax known as Prop J, which is currently slated to expire in 2028, the end of 2028. So we embarked upon this request for proposals for qualified polling companies and that would conduct polling and outreach services over the course of the next 11 months. There was a committee comprised of Mr. Shane, our finance director, myself, the city manager, and the community development director. And we looked at the different, Mr. Shane was not on that committee. We've done so many committees. Mr. Shane was on a different committee. It was Mr. Villegas, our management analyst in the city manager's office. So we interviewed a number of organizations that responded to the request for proposal, and at this point in time, we're recommending that we select Competitive Edge Research and Communication in an amount not to exceed $182,000. And they have a comprehensive plan for both polling and how they're going to conduct the polling, and also how they're going to conduct the outreach services that are subsequent to that. So we will be able, we think, with the program that they've designed, that we're going to be able to get a very comprehensive picture of where the community stands in really 2 to 3 different snapshots in time. an early one that will occur shortly after they begin their work if this item is approved, and then one later on as we move into the spring and summertime, and then the design of really where the outreach needs to go to talk to the voters about the importance of extending this source of revenue. So we feel very confident. I think the city manager and I feel very confident that with the amount of time that we're giving ourselves and really taking a look at the various companies that came forth, all of which were excellent companies, by the way. It was a very difficult choice with some very well-known companies. They all say, and I do want to say this, they all said something that I believe that I've felt very strongly. I don't want to speak for any of the other members on the committee, but all of them that we interviewed said that the polling data that we had was flawed the first time around, and that the methodologies that they seek to employ and will employ are completely different and far more accurate. And so that hearing that from all of the respondents to the RFP, I think gave us a lot of confidence that no matter which firm was selected, we were going to get a very high level, and we will get a very high level polling sample and some accurate data out of this. So I think there's a lot of confidence in this process moving forward. And so with that, I would answer any questions, but I would I would encourage the council to favorably consider this, and we'll move down the road towards collecting the necessary data.
Questions? Michelle?
Okay, thanks, Vince. What did we spend last time for our pollster?
Yeah, it was about 125,000.
Okay. Did we get any money back for them giving us flawed data? I mean, they gave us such a glowing report, and everybody's on board, and we're going to do this. And like you said, it failed miserably. I mean, they should have given us a refund, I think. And normally I agree with you guys on most financial situations here. But what is going to change the mindset of the residents? Because what I saw or what I heard from residents is they do not want any taxes whatsoever. And the economy has not gotten that much better. And it may get better if we have a change in administration. I don't know. But how, obviously you guys are confident that this is going to, we get better polling numbers and we can put it out. But what's going to change the mind of the residents? Because people are they're taxed to death. They're struggling paycheck to paycheck. And for some, that's just a big no.
Okay, there's several different ways that I think we can address this. First of all, we're dealing with, now we have 11 months instead of 4.
Okay.
So secondly, I think we're going to get far more accurate data about where this community is with this. And the way we construct our outreach and the way we pursue the outreach has got to be dependent on what that accurate data shows. If we have inaccurate data on a short timeline, we don't feel as though we need to really be out front with it because, hey, everybody supports it, right? It was over 60% of support. So we don't really need to run this aggressive program. And with that level of support, with just 3 months to the election, why do a whole lot of anything, right? Well, all of that was incorrect.
Right.
So we have a lot longer runway. We have a group here that's being recommended, along with the others, that has very, very sophisticated ways of polling over a much longer period of time that's going to give us more accurate data and allow us to construct an outreach program that's going to directly understand where people are. What we learned in the interview process was that the questions that they're going to ask in this process, it's going to take anywhere between 25 and 35 minutes per person. And it's much, much more detailed questions, detailed data that they're going to be able to secure. And so I think we didn't see that the first time. We saw some questions that had some details and what was important to you and whatnot. But this is really going to be at a different level. And lastly, what I would say is we were looking for an increase last time. This is a continuation of a tax that has already been paid for quite a long time. And I think when you talk about preserving city services, no new taxes, continuing the way it is, that's a message that I think could potentially resonate, but we'll leave that to the experts. But I do think that the conditions here now, the consultants, the time frame, the type of polling, and the fact that there's no increase, I think all those contribute to a potentially better result, at least on how to approach outreach services.
And I respect that, and I think that there is going to be more of a robust effort compared to last time. Do we have a contingency plan in place or thoughts for if the pollster comes back and says, yeah, no, things haven't really changed. We did this, 35-minute interviews per resident. We polled, I don't know what the numbers are going to be, how many they plan on polling, but say they polled 10,000 people, and it's still, they're just going, no, we don't want this. Do we have a plan together to make up for the loss that when it sunsets?
I'll say, one, they're not going to be polling 10,000 people.
I know, but it would be nice if we could.
Yeah. We actually, 600 is the magic number. We actually, in the RFP, asked for 900. Almost every firm said that it's almost an impossible number to get to, just the math of it's hard to get to. When these pollster companies are looking at statewide issues, they're polling about 900. So 600 gives us 95% confidence level. Going to 900 gets us a couple extra percentage. We've asked for the 900. The $182,000 includes the 900. I think what will be useful as part of this process is because there's so much length. And remember, the council isn't voting to put this on the ballot. You're voting to spend some money to understand how your community feels about this situation. Part of that includes some town hall meetings, and part of that includes assuming it's called Measure J in the future, if Measure J isn't passed, what do you want to see cut? What are the $12 million in cuts that you want to see? And we need to have a good, robust conversation with the community about that. And there, lo and behold, there may be some magical things that come out of that where people go, oh, yeah, we could do without this or that, or maybe we can figure out a way to reduce taxes on our residents and receive less services, right? So I think the runway is appropriate, as Vince talked about, having that extra 11 months, not 1 month, will allow the council to have better data, not just quantity or qualitative data, or quantitative, but qualitative data. You'll have better resources to make a decision if the polling data says, yeah, you should probably think about putting this on the ballot. It'll be easier for you to say yes or no when you get that opportunity in July or August.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I had to play devil's advocate here, but, we took a lot of heat, those of us on the council, and you guys as well, took a lot of heat after the last one. And it's not that I can't handle the heat, but I would just hate to put the residents through this again, if we don't have our ducks in a row.
Well, I mean, if I can just add, I agree, and I think it's safe to say, speaking for Graham and myself, we put our professional reputations on the line when we make a recommendation of this magnitude to you. And to have the polling data be as flawed as it was, personally upset me badly. I mean, I was very aggressive with the last polling company, and I stated as much in a debriefing meeting. So believe me, if I want to go this route again, or would recommend to the city manager and you to go to this route again and spend this money, I want to be as comprehensive as possible. And as far as a contingency plan, I would just say, kind of depending upon what the data shows, the obvious contingency plan, again, for this council to consider, depending upon the mood, if it's negative, as you pointed out, Ms. Mitchell, is the midterm election of 2026 and the presidential election again in 2028. Those are the contingencies, depending upon what the attitudes of the community are. But as Mr. Mitchell said, we need to have a good dialogue with the community through these workshops that will occur as part of the plan that you're entertaining right now.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate you being, upfront about how it affected you, because it was horrible.
Public safety takes up about 70% of the general fund budget. And it's my personal opinion that without continuing the half-cent sales tax, that it could be catastrophic for the city. Because you only have so much left over after that 70%. Where do we cut? And I never, ever want to cut public safety. That's my number one priority is police and fire. But someone's got to make the paychecks. Someone's got to check building plans. So, and a lot of the others, La Mesa has a 0.75% sales tax. So we're not, out of the ballpark with continuing what we already have.
Mr. Kendrick, to your point, if you add up $12 million, it pretty much, if you got rid of everybody at City Hall, you still would have to cut public safety. And if you were to cut our budget on a fair pro rata basis on department, that equals about 30 police officers, just to give you a sense of the scope of what $12 million means.
The public might ask, is the last polling company one of the three?
No.
Okay, that's good news. We also should remind the public why we got into this situation. It has to do a lot with property tax share. El Cajon, years and years and years ago, before I believe Prop 13 was locked in, received somewhere about 11 to 13% of the property tax revenues on the properties in El Cajon, which already are lower than Carlsbad and Sanitas, who received close to 20 to 24% because that's what they requested. So we are getting penalized because we were very good at managing our city, those before me, and we have less money from the county than Encinitas has on a higher property base. So we were very good with Prop O, the public safety sales tax, and we did sunset that and reverse that, cancel that, because it met its meaning. There was no need to continue it. In this case, because of the property tax revenue is so imbalanced, it does create a demand on us.
I know that on the ballot this cycle is the prop that would force all tax increases to go to 2/3. Is the company that you're recommending aware? Do they have any opinions on that? And how does that factor into the polling, starting over? Because, if I think that's a big part of this line of questioning. If taxes in California in the future require 2/3, and our polling just completely negates that potential, then it might be faulty again.
I don't believe that measure has qualified quite yet. I know there's a competing measure that would sort of negate some of that a little bit. One of the things that we did talk to the polling companies, and we'll continue to talk about them, is to measure whether a special tax, which requires a higher threshold, would be more palatable to our residents, and that tax would only go towards public safety. So I think as we do the polling, we'll kind of look at both to see which has the best path forward for the council to consider. And when we present that, we'll present that data point to you.
Anybody else? All right. Any speaker cards on this item?
We have one, sir, from Truth.
All right, thank you for all of that information, everybody. I was curious. Flawed results the first time. That's not very good. But you had a great question, Michelle, about where was the refund? I think the city's entitled. I actually talked to the city of Santee about this, who is attempting the exact same thing. And heat thrower Carl DeMaio gave some of them a hard time about it on Twitter. They didn't heed my warning I gave. Up to $182,000 to find out people's opinions about being taxed. I think it's kind of obvious. I feel like you guys could just save money if you just ask me, and I'll give you the answer. They're not going to go for it. That's my opinion. But I know, Prop J is worth over $14 million a year, so it's worth a measly $182,000 to some to convince people to approve the extension, at least to some people. I don't think it's worth it to me. But some of the interesting things in there that is going to happen if it's approved, we got polling, voter propensity and home education and engagement strategy, home education, providing surveys, informational educational materials, public outreach meetings, discerning voter patterns. And it's kind of ironic because earlier, Michelle, you said something about in Mexico, PSAs a little at a time. And that's actually called government propaganda in Mexico. They're very good at it. I don't think we should engage in that. Although PSAs are not a bad thing sometimes. But apparently it only takes 600 people to know the city's opinion. That's pretty low. I don't know. I don't remember how many people here, 300, 100 and something. I don't remember, but that's not very many people when you do the math. Steve, I'm sure, knows the math numbers. I agreed with Graham about having real talk with residents about what's going to get cut. I always like real talk. People need to know this is going to be the effect of anything that happens. It's kind of like with housing. I always like to tell people in government, you know what, you should just be honest about what's going on here. The state's making you. But if you don't do it, then you're going to have a lawsuit. And I say, well, just be honest with the city. What's going to happen if you say no? Something I think a lot of people don't realize is in every city is hanging on by a financial thread. They may be balancing their budget, but without things like ARPA, cities struggle because they got used to having extra billions. And then they struggle now just to have proper reserves. In these times of ever-increasing inflation, who's going to say yes to another tax? I think that's what it comes down to. So my suggestion is not wasting time and money again on this potential revenue source, and I wish I had a solution. The only one I got is, I don't know, maybe more billboards. So it's something everybody likes, but I don't see it passing. So, but I don't want to see a public safety cut either, so I don't know. Good luck.
Anybody else?
No other speakers, sir.
It's back to us before we vote. I just want to say that I don't like the idea of being involved in any way in raising taxes, but I've been doing this long enough now to know that the best way to govern is to do the right thing. And I can't imagine, right now we've got 5 police officers at any given time on the streets of the entire city of El Cajon. I'm always a little shaken by that concept because it's a pretty big city and there's a lot going on. And the idea of cutting 30 more positions is terrifying to me. It's just a poll. I think, Michelle, I think your concerns will be borne out by the poll. I think we're going to get a sense of what people believe and what they think. The way they do these polls is it's not just a horse race, right? They're going to say, would you be willing to do this? How would you feel if it meant cutting 30 police officers? And you will get different results based upon the amount of education that you give the people taking the poll. So I think if we get the right polling company this time, and I think we'll have a pretty good understanding of what people have a stomach for. And so I recommend that we go at least this far and get the polling done. Steve?
Last time, the council was very hands-off in terms of what was polled, how it was polled, and it was a disaster. I normally don't like to get into the weeds on these kind of things, but I think this time we need to be a little more involved in what is asked of people. Not directing, but being part of the conversation. I would propose an ad hoc committee to be part of the staff committee to make sure we're asking the right questions. Because if we don't ask the right questions, it's $182,000 out the door.
Well, that's controversial. What do you have to say about that, Vince? Because I having worked with pollsters myself, I know that it's a science and they've got specific ideas about how that should be done. So too many cooks in the kitchen can be a problem. But Steve's right that we were pretty hands off last time. So maybe there's a compromise, and maybe you want to think about that and come back to us at some point.
No, I can take that. I think having an ad hoc committee is not a bad idea, but I think you made a good point, Mr. Mayor. There is a science here, and Vince or I meddling would probably mess up the science. The same would apply to a council member. However, I think it's probably important for the council to see how the sausage is made, number one. And two, you know the community better than the polling company does. And so having that sense would probably add some value to it. So I wouldn't see a problem with that at all.
You know, my suggestion would be to have a ad hoc committee where the pollster comes and we just talk to him, rather than tell him what he's going to do. Just tell him our concerns and give him our ideas. The pollster's like a doctor. He'll say, well, that's a bad idea and that's a good idea. And, you know, how would you feel about that?
I agree with that. I'm not saying we should direct the questions. I'm saying the public is going to say to us, you guys weren't on this last time, and it was a disaster. You guys need to be, you people, need to be involved this time.
The question I would have about that, does that need to be a public meeting?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, it's not on the agenda for that condition, and it wasn't part of the RFP process.
Okay.
My recommendation is that if that's the direction you'd like to come, we
Agendize
can come
it.
bring it back on the first meeting in January as an agenda item.
I think that's a good idea. So,
I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
To this assistant city manager, is part of the RFP process, was it included to not just engage the community, but community organizations? So Chamber of Commerce, San Diego County taxpayers, is that part of the RFP for the polling to engage any part of that?
It wasn't part of the RFP specifically but it is definitely a component that we looked at during the interview process for the outreach to involve organizations. I can tell you right now, the taxpayers organization was mentioned several times during the interviews. Okay. The importance there. The local Chamber of Commerce was mentioned. So it is part of the outreach component. It was not part of the written RFP that demanded their response to that aspect.
So the pollsters are aware of those organizations.
Oh, very much so.
And engaging them could be part of the process.
It will be part of the process.
Okay.
Yes.
In fact, Competitive Edge Research, their education partner is Southwest Strategy, and they actually talked about engaging these different groups unsolicited. That wasn't part of our questions. Okay. So it's already part of their thinking as part of our education process.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to echo the mayor's concerns about, cutting public safety. I've been on police ride-alongs, and I was breathless by the end of the day on an 8-hour day because they go from one call to another. Their calls stacked up. It's extremely stressful situation. I could never do it. I had to go to the chiropractor after my after my 8-hour shift because my back hurt, my neck hurt. I had a headache. And I said, how do they possibly do this? Driving down the street, looking down the alleys.
They're young.
Yeah, and looking at watching the little computer saying this and that, and it was really an experience and made me really appreciate what our police officers have to do. And I also went on rides with the firefighters, and that's really stressful for them, and they're very, very busy. And one thing I found out is they never get closure. They don't know if some person that they took there to the emergency room is going to die, is died or not. So all those things make it so you have to be a very special kind of person to be in public safety. And our community really benefits from our firefighters and our police officers.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right. Looking for a motion then.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the staff's recommendations that it's exempt from CEQA and enter into agreement with Competitive Edge and Research.
Second.
All right. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. Long meeting, everybody. For those of you who stayed through the whole meeting, you should get some kind of an award. All right. Item 15 is an award of RFP number 020 through 24, Economic Analysis Services. Oscar, City Manager, to please tell us about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. If I can get the slide up on the screen. Earlier this year, on June 27th, the City Council received a report about Parkway Plaza and kind of all of the different visions that could occur as part of its evolution. And one of the things that kind of came out of that meeting was this idea of, was this idea of issuing an RFP to help identify what's the economic realities. I mean, we could talk about what we want to see there, but if the economics isn't there, it'll never happen. So there's some discussion about engaging with the firm, and an RFP was released in August. The request for proposal sought services from a firm to provide a market feasibility analysis specific to the mall and possible redevelopment opportunities. That specifically was to look at a pro forma for various redevelopment possibilities, including housing, feasibility analysis on market conditions steeped in reality, other miscellaneous fiscal considerations such as tax flow that would come into the city, if one project would generate more taxes or revenue for the city versus another. And it also included architectural massing and an understanding of what that vision would look like, so there could be various concepts that would help spark the imagination of not only the community but also the existing property owners. And as part of this whole process, there would be also stakeholder outreach. The city formed a committee of 4 members, and we looked at project team members, experience, and not only market feasibility analysis, but also pro forma development, how they would look to stakeholders in the community and also the mall owners, their architect partnering firms, their work plan, and eventually their costs. And at the end of the day, we decided that Hunden Partners was the best fit for the city. We did review 7 RFP responses. We narrowed it down to 4, and frankly, we probably could have hired all 7. One of all 7 probably could have done the trick. We narrowed it down to the top 4. We conducted pretty extensive interviews, about 45-minute interviews with each one. We really dove into a lot of detail. We felt that Hunden had the best experience. They are currently they are located in Chicago, but they have local connections. They've both done projects locally, and also they have staff that is located here locally as well. Their portfolio is impressive. I'm not going to go through the thousands of projects they've done, but they recently did a large downtown series of studies for downtown Fort Worth, Texas, and they also just recently finished the Chicago South Loop mixed-use district, looking at a whole bunch of things. If we had my presentation, there's a map of the United States that shows the about 1,000 different projects they've done around the United States, including several in the city of San Diego, the Convention Center, hotel project in Carlsbad, to name 2 of them. As you can recall, the city council set an initial budget of about $250,000, $250,000 to do the study. This came in a slightly under that, and so staff would recommend that the city council, after answering any questions that we have, would determine that the project is exempt from CEQA, and then authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Hunden Strategic Partners in an amount not to exceed $248,915 for a 1-year term. So with that, staff's able to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Graham. Questions? Michelle?
I'm going to make this meeting even longer. Question. At what level are the owners of the mall participating at?
Now or as part of this process?
all of it?
So, I mean, we're having regular conversations with the folks that are the former owner of Sears. They're actually trying to apply for a different project, so we have regular communication with them. I just spoke with the folks that own the former Macy's spot because they're looking at some potential projects. The meeting with the Israeli owner of the mall proper was postponed. That was supposed to be in October, literally the week after the conflict that started there. And so his plans were canceled. I think he's planning a trip in January. So staff on a regular basis is having conversations with them, bringing them along. They know what we're trying to accomplish, and they know they'll be involved with the process. If the council decides to move forward with this project, then one of the very first meetings will actually be Hunden meeting with the mall owners. One of the things that endeared us to this firm is not only do they have public sector experience, they also represent malls as well. And so they understand how both sides think, and they know what our needs are, but they also know what a mall owner's needs would be as well.
Okay, so where's the money coming from, the 248 plus?
It's out of the Economic Development Fund, which is funded through the general fund.
Okay. And Economic Development Fund, sorry. Slow writing. I know that if we were to re-envision Parkway Plaza, bring in more money, we as a city would benefit, and I understand that. But $248,000 to find that out, that seems like an awful lot. Do we anticipate a big return on our investment in getting ideas from this company?
It's not cheap. Not going to lie about that. But this is the cost of doing this level of analysis. And one of the wonderful things is the RFP process proved that out. All of them came in within dollars of each other.
Okay. I'll let somebody else.
Bill? Yeah. Graham, how much revenue, sales tax revenue, does Parkway Plaza pull in? Just a ballpark?
I don't have that number, and I don't know if I'm looking to my finance director. I don't know if I'm allowed to share that number.
Oh, okay.
Because of sales tax sharing data. It is our most significant. We have what are called geo areas where we break the city into areas.
Right.
The downtown, for example, is one. Fletcher Hills Boulevard is one. The mall is our number one sales tax generating geo area.
All right. Thank you.
More questions?
A question about Hunden's relationships. I mean, I like the fact that they're local, but if anyone's going to tackle Parkway Plaza with regard to how big of a landscape it is, it's got to be someone, an organization, a hedge fund, someone with big money. How well connected is Hunden connected with, big developers, big firms, things like that? That's really the question that I would have, because ultimately that's our goal, is not just to cast vision as to what Parkway Plaza could be, but parlay that into some kind of a relationship that could result in actual construction happening there.
So of the 4 firms that we interviewed, one exclusively had public clients. So they had no private sector clients. The other 3 all had clients. As you recall, one of the firms that we're not selecting or recommending to select, I don't know if you remember, but I showed a picture of a mall that was redeveloped in Washington that became the headquarters for the Seattle Kraken, the NHL team. That one of those firms that we interviewed did that project, right?
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of caliber. This firm that we're recommending, Hunden, of the 3 that had private sector experience, had the most private sector experience.
Okay.
One of the other things that they bring to the table is they've put together lots of P3 deals, public-private partnership deals, so they understand, again, the private sector needs, the public sector needs, and they can figure out how to marry those together and take advantage of our strengths and our weaknesses to ensure that the mall gets, property owners get what they need, the city gets what it needs, and they can help structure those.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll save my comment for later.
It says for a one-year term. Are you anticipating it could go longer than 1 year?
No, I mean
To
the
a
goal.
second year?
The goal is to have this wrapped up in a 1 year, less than a 1 year period.
Okay. And really, there's no requirement that they adopt any of the recommendations coming out of this report, is there?
Absolutely, because we don't own 1 square inch of that mall property. The owners of the mall could say, thanks for the report, and put it on their shelf. Absolutely. I think our goal is, it's my assessment that the mall owners do not see the value of working together because they haven't run the numbers. They're looking at onesie projects because they're trying to balance their budget tomorrow. And I think the economic analysis will show, here's what your returns could be, but in order to do that, you can't go it alone. You're going to have to work with each other to make that happen. And that's the value of the pro forma. Now, the pro forma may also say, it's nothing. There's nothing you can do there. It doesn't make sense to do anything. Just let it go. I don't know. That would be then a very expensive $250,000 answer. But my assumption is that looking at other mall repositionings, that didn't happen because someone had a brilliant idea. It took some initial investment into that. And when you have one mall owner, it's easy to make that investment. But when you have 4 or 5 different owners, it's more difficult to divvy up that cost and get them to work together. So that becomes the role of the city, this umbrella.
So you mentioned 4 to 5. There really are 4 to 5 different owners within the Parkway Plaza property, aren't there?
Yes. I mean, there's one of the owners is they show up as on the property taxes. It's JCPenney. They technically do not own their own land, but they have a lease agreement that gives them some ownership rights. The other thing that I don't know if we didn't realize this, frankly, until we started this process, that most of the lease agreements with some of the larger tenants actually have virtually property ownership rights, where development along Fletcher Parkway or Johnson, if it were to block them, they have the ability to quash that development. So these are the intricacies that we don't know about, that they know, that firms like Hunden know how to deal, because they've negotiated those terms on the other side of the table.
Okay, and I'm looking for a short answer to this last one. If 4 to 5 owners are in this thing, you're saying one owner probably wouldn't do this kind of a study because they'd say, well, it's just for me and I have this little portion. You're saying the city, by providing this, provides value to all the owners, with them having not to take a risk on their own that somebody may not. We're coordinating an effort here. Is that
Correct.
how I'm reading this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everything the city manager said. Putting on my real estate appraiser's hat, I've had dealings with malls before, and the Israeli bondholders probably don't have a whole lot of incentive to put lots of money into it. And by having kind of a master plan by someone that really knows what's going on, in my opinion, makes it a lot more marketable for them to sell and get out of their equity position, because before they were a lender. They're not in the business of building malls. They're in the business of lending money. And so there's like a synergy of all the holders of the different interests in that mall, the 5 holders, to coordinate, and that kind of gives them a regional power to come up with a plan that's comprehensive and that will, where all those properties complement each other and bring more people in. So that's kind of like the power of that mall. And right now, they don't really have that power because the owner, the bondholders, that's not their line of business. So, and exactly as what the city manager was saying, they're probably not going to put a lot of money and to building new things, or even looking at building new things, because they want to go back to being bondholders on something. So that's the way I look at it. And so I think this is that the city is in a good position as kind of this neutral party to give it to another neutral party where they are experts, and they can put together a plan that makes economic sense where everybody, including the city, benefits.
Anybody else?
I just have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a step back, and malls are dying across America. I mean, I don't think anyone can say different outside of a couple different examples in hyper-affluent areas. But even then, the traditional model for malls has shifted from what we saw in Parkway Plaza to now. You can look at in Del Mar, One Paseo. That's the new model of a mall where you have a handful, maybe 10 shops instead of 300 shops or whatever's at Parkway Plaza. So the malls malls have changed, and the desire is to have a place where people can have an experience and no longer to go shopping because of the Amazon effect. COVID increased that to increase malls dying. If anyone follows social media on the mall, everyone just doesn't. The Parkway Plaza is not seen in a high regard from the public, and it's no secret. And you go there through the mall, and there's vacancies all over the place. So something has to be done. Now, Grossmont did something. Grossmont Mall did something. I believe there was one owner there, and they sold. And that's a very simple transaction because it's one-to-one. You don't need to herd cats with owners that have different interests, like Gary outlined. So there's really no other regional organization that's going to step in and try and spark some opportunity at that place. And really, it's the cities is all that's left. And Parkway Plaza is our biggest tax generator. Even when it's struggling, it's still our biggest tax generator. It's one of our biggest assets in the city. And our previous agenda item was tax increase, polling. This is how we spark, this is how we avoid having to raise taxes, is be an incentive for businesses to come in. It's all related. So I love the idea that Hunden Partners is connected with big developers. They've worked in the private and public sector. But I don't want our mall to just completely die. It's not responsible, and I think $250,000, $248,000. We have to try, and I think we're gonna get some, not only establishing the relationship with Hunden, but then also extending that relationship with all of their network is going to be a good thing for the city, for Parkway Plaza, and put us on the map and say, hey, this is an opportunity. So I'm going to be voting yes on this.
Anybody else? Okay. Any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards, sir.
I just want to say before we vote on that, I think everybody's going to probably vote yes on this, but you have to think big, too. This is not just about the mall. This is about having kind of a premier property in the city that brings people from outside the city. And I was just at Fashion Valley the other day, and I was really impressed by how nice they've made that. And I just think that if when it comes to attracting more people to come live here, to spend more money on more expensive housing, to open businesses here, I think having a really nice, vibrant mall would be a good. I think it's worth the money to see if we can make that happen. All right. Any more discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to adopt the resolution to enter an agreement with Hudson Strategic Partners as outlined in the staff report, and make a motion that the project is exempt from CEQA.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
There are no commissioner reports on today's agenda. Item 16 is at my activities report, and I think there's a speaker for that.
Yes, sir. We have Truth.
Hey, Truth.
Hello again. At the December 8th Sandag meeting, Bill had some questions about why tolls on the 125 were going, or what? I don't know. They're either not going to be collected or had drivers getting bills they weren't supposed to. And I want the whole city to know what this mayor has been experiencing. This is a mashup of what transpired that day. Be patient.
I would like to request a written explanation for the questions that I asked. I would also like to formally suggest the possibility of an independent investigation into this. Perhaps everything about this is completely above board, but I don't believe that the public has the confidence in us any longer. That is my recommendation to the board, and I ask that would be agendized at a future meeting so that the board can vote on it.
So, Mayor, I actually take, we will do our best to respond to every one of those questions. But can you give me a second? But I take offense to anyone saying that that there's no transparency or that there is. Listen, it's my turn to speak.
I'm not speaking.
That this board is not taking this seriously, that we haven't followed process, that we're not investigating, that we are not doing our due diligence. I take offense to that. To say that there is no interest from this board to actually move forward and that we don't care and like all this stuff, I really take offense to that. And to say that there is no interest in this board to move forward and take steps on what we're doing, I find that very offensive. So with that,
Let me respond to those accusations.
you just said that right now.
Can I respond to the accusations?
No, sir.
I didn't say the things you said I said.
I heard you say,
So
sir. Go ahead.
that is not what I said.
Okay,
And-
fine.
And I think my obligation to the public is greater than my obligation not to offend you.
I take offense. I take offense to that. I really take offense to that, and I find that very offensive.
She was very offended, as you could hear. Okay. That was the short version of what happened. But what Bill was saying was, I think my obligation to the public is greater than my obligation not to offend you. I can relate to that. But why would anyone feel offended at someone asking for an independent audit of one of Sandag's many flubs? And Bill, I was actually going to call for the exact same thing in my speech. I cut it at the last second. What do you know? But this event of offended feelings made me believe that there's even more corruption going on in the South Bay than what the news is reporting. That's just a feeling. I don't have proof yet. And I'm not done addressing this topic at Sandag. Believe me, I already got some stuff written. Bill, thank you for putting up with my friend Nora's nonsense. I would like to see the people of the city of El Cajon either attend in person or call into the next January 12th Sandag meeting and back up your mayor, rep your city, and call for more transparency. Thank you.
Thanks, Truth. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Truth.
So my activity report is as reported. Gary?
As reported.
Steve?
As reported.
Phil?
As reported.
Oh, I think, Steve, I'm sorry, I think there was a speaker card for your item as well.
There is, sir. For item 17, Truth.
I just wanted to mess with Steve, that's all. I gave him a hard time at a couple of the last MTSs. I think he's not a big fan of the public being able to comment on council reports. We'll see. Steve's gotten a little taste of Sandag, as in the report. And I see you had some emails to Joel and to the county. I think I know the answer of how that went. They listen to you just the same as they listen to everyone else. The Board of Supervisors does not care what constituents think, and that's a fact of life. You have to accept. It's actually not too much different than MTS, where someone like myself can talk about the lack of safety on the trolleys that needs to be addressed by simply having transit security at every station and on every trolley possible. But when MTS doesn't listen to such obvious solutions, we have incidents like the 2 separate attacks where one 21-year-old was stabbed in the chest on a trolley while taking a nap, and where one 20-year-old was punched and then knocked unconscious after a transit security exited the trolley car. Instead, we have people on MTS concerned with military-like operation shakedowns for fare recovery, with 50 to 60 transit security wasted in only one location. And that's more violence in the eye when reps lie and say it's done for safety like Steve did. I don't like liars. That's why I like people like Ron Hall, who are at least honest about the real intentions of decisions. That's all it is. I don't care about disagreements. And the lies and ignorance that I hear at MTS is really why I continue to participate. It's not because I like it. It's actually my least favorite board and meeting. So if you ever hear a bad mood, that's why it puts me in a bad mood. I try not to be, but it happens. So regarding that December 6th meeting of the MTS East County reps, I hope you in the East County clique, as I'm calling it, can get some sense together before you lose the very small 3% or less of people who even dare to risk their lives and waste their time considering taking unsafe and inefficient public transit provided by MTS. But, maybe I'll talk to you Thursday in person. I don't know yet. I'm not sure if that's going to work out. With my MTS minute, if I'm lucky, maybe it'll be 30 seconds next time, because they're not big fans of the Brown Act. They prefer to go home by noon. I figured that out. That's okay. I'd prefer they stop being propped up by the federal government and go out of business. But who knows? Well, let me not end on a bad note. Let me say Merry Christmas. It's good to see all of you again, and much better than San Diego, like I said. Thank you.
Phil. As reported. Michelle. As reported. Okay. We do have a joint council member report from Deputy Mayor Steve Goebel and Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item was requested by 2 residents looking to improve the life vitality in El Cajon, where they were looking for shade structures, either permanent or temporary, in the front yard. Currently, they're not allowed by code. And so this would say, hey, can we allow seating areas under shade structures such as pergolas or other things? I'm very aware of the time staff spends on different projects like these, and so really all I'm looking for here is a 2 to 3 hour cursory review of, yes, this would be something that might take 20 hours of planning time to look up different codes and things, or not. And it's response to a resident request, and so that's what I'm looking for, is a very high-level, cursory, couple-hour, does this thing make sense in our city?
Phil?
I have nothing further to add it.
Okay, so Graham, is that something that's possible?
I kind of heard 2 things from Mr. Goebel, and I don't know which one. One was kind of a review to identify what would go into an analysis. But I also heard, does this make sense for El Cajon? Those are probably 2 separate things, and my feeling would be, as a policy recommender, I don't know if staff would be, it's not our community, right? It's almost like we need to give you the analysis of the pros and cons of moving forward, and maybe that can be a short analysis if that's what you're looking for. So I'm looking for some clarity on specifically what you're looking for, because I think for us to opine, is this good or bad for El Cajon, that's far more than 2 to 3 hours.
Let me revise my remarks. I'm looking for the fire department to say, hey, we have a problem with those kind of structures in a front yard. They're a risk to, especially if they're made out of fabric instead of metal, and so that's not good for the community. On the other hand, neighbors meeting out in the front yard in the afternoon to enjoy talk time is good for the community. And I just explained 2 pros and cons in 30 seconds, and I bet you could do better in 2 hours.
Okay.
To clarify, this is these pergolas or shade structures, not fabric based. Is that correct?
My desire is they not be fabric. I'm assuming that the staff would agree.
Mine as well.
For fire
Yes,
reasons.
yes, okay. Yeah.
All right, well, I think you've given direction to staff. Would you like, we need to vote on it, though. Somebody make a motion?
So I'll make the motion that staff spend no more than 3 hours on this to decide the merits of modifying the code to allow permanent and semi-permanent shade structures.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
I'm sorry, do we have any speaker cards on that item? I apologize. All right, there are no general information items, no first or second readings of ordinances today, and that brings us to closed session. The city attorney will recite the title and lead us into the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the city clerk's effort to try to get even with me after all those uniform code descriptions. And I think she's done this in conjunction with the city manager. The first item is closed session for conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision D of California Government Code section 54956.9 with one potential case. The facts and circumstances are as follows. In the course of construction of the city's El Cajon Boulevard streetscape project, city's contractor Tri-Group Construction and Development, Inc. has presented numerous claims against the city for extra days and extra compensation under the contract. The second item, number 23, closed session, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9, one potential case. Item 24, closed session, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. The name of the case is Tri-Group Construction and Development, Inc. versus City of El Cajon, Superior Court of California, County of San Diego, case number 23 SC 03197C. Item number 25 is a closed session conference with legal counsel for existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9, Truck and SUV Superstore, Inc. versus City of El Cajon. It's a Superior Court case number 37-2023-00050319. And finally, the last item is item 26, closed session for a conference with legal counsel. Anticipated litigation, significant exposure of litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. In this case, there are two potential cases. The facts and circumstances are claims were received from Alan Cunningham, DBA California Registration Services, and Stetz Iron Horse Ranch, where both have submitted or make allegations of loss of profits and other damages due to construction on the El Cajon Boulevard streetscape project, which abuts the claimant's businesses.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion then to adjourn to closed session. Please vote. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back soon, I hope, and we'll conclude the meeting at that point. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back from closed session. I'll ask our city attorney to report on closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The city council met in closed session on the 5 items on the agenda, and rather than go through them again, I will just report that no action was taken on any of them.
This brings us to the adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 12th day of December 2023, is adjourned till Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 at right now.